This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? And welcome to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson, Michael Remis with you. What a crazy, crazy day so far. Thought we'd be talking with our pal Geoff Fienberg a little later on about his home course, Oakdale, hosting the RBC Canadian Open this week. Fienberg's going to join us a little later on, though, but the biggest story in the world of sports, frankly, and business, is the stunning merger of the PGA Tour with LIV Golf and the Saudi Investment Fund. We will talk about that as well as all the other big stories around the Stanley Cup Final. We actually have a trade to announce as well. We'll get to all that in a minute. It's going to be a great show, though. It is CFL opening week. We're not forgetting about the three-down game. Justin Dunk of Three Down Nation's going to jump on with us. And well, let's just say we'll have lots to get to with Mike McIntyre when he jumps on. Of course, Aaron Cockrell, who he did such a great piece on as Winnipeg's top golfer, working on the DP Tour, is here back overseas in his native Canada, teeing it up. And don't be surprised if Cockrell makes a surprise appearance later on in the show. Just a little tease for later on. But Mike will jump in, and we are going to obviously focus in on some Jets off-season news. Bomber season here. But I know Mike will have some takes on just the earth-shattering news from the world of golf today that has everyone, and certainly Twitter and social media, absolutely ablaze. Listen, before we get to bring Michael Remis in and get the show on the road, a huge thanks to the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day. Of course, Modern Man, Aquatech, Manitoba Battery, Canadian Club, the Gold Eyes, Assiniboia Downs, Vita Health, Wallace & Wallace, Nick and Nicky DQ, F Apparel, Princess Auto, Consolidated Supply, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, Little Brown Jug, Aikens Lake, Breezy Bend, and, of course, our partners at Coolbet Canada. Thanks again to Pat Gregoire for jumping on the program yesterday. It was great to have Pat on. And a special thanks to Coolbet. If you had missed the last few shows, we've got great news. Winnipeg Sports Talk is going to be live from Nashville at the NHL Draft for the entire week beginning on Monday, June 26th. We certainly imagine that it is going to be a very important and interesting few days for the Winnipeg Jets, considering all the possibilities around their offseason and their roster. And we're really, really appreciative of Coolbet for coming on and being our presenting sponsor for it. So follow Coolbet Canada. I'll have our daily pick from the lock shop a little later on. But make a point of joining us daily, but particularly at the end of the month in Nashville for Winnipeg Sports Talk at the NHL Draft, brought to you by Coolbet. All right, let's get going. There is a lot to touch on before Justin Dunk comes on a little later on. Remo, what's up? How are you?
Good. I was just putting together, our notes for today. Not a lot of hockey stuff. We did actually have a trade right before the show, so those details coming together. Oh, here they are on the TSN site. I don't know. Chris Johnson. I don't know which insider. Elliott's got it. Chris Johnston's got it. So the Jackets acquired Provorov from the Flyers for a 3-team trade that includes the Kings. The Kings are going to retain some of Provorov's salary. And I think the Kings have also traded Cal Peterson to the Flyers to clear some of that cap space because they're trying to re-sign Vladislav Gavrikov. So that's coming in. But I'm feeling good. It's hot out still, which is great. We're counting down with Justin Dunk to CFL season. Kicks off Thursday. Stanley Cup Final going on too. So, and yes, this what a day to have Fienberg on live, doing some Big J journal work at the RBC Canadian Open. We'll have Mark Zucchino on tomorrow too. So there's a lot of news actually today.
Yeah, and I mean, unfortunately, the Canadian Open again is getting sort of hijacked for this. 4 straight years, 2 years canceled because of the pandemic and the rules, and players not going to be able to get across the border, so it didn't happen. Last year, the Canadian Open, which was won by Rory McIlroy, -19, incredible event, but it also happened coinciding with the first LIV event, which of course was big news in the world of golf. And then today, as players were out on the practice range, finding out on their phones that the PGA Tour had merged with LIV. Like, Remo, I know you're not a big golf guy, but I mean, you're certainly got your ear to the ground in the world of sports. I mean, what was your reaction to this?
Yeah, you're definitely paying attention to LIV when it started up, and I watched the full swing. So we've seen all the LIV versus PGA. Pretty shocking that after everything that they went through, not allowing them on the on the tour, and debating if they should be able to play majors, to just go and merge with them and take all their money. The thing that that's the most fascinating is all those players who said, no, I'm not going to take this Saudi money. Like Tiger Woods, he turned down $1 billion,
$800 million reportedly.
Yeah, Rory McIlroy, very outspoken about not taking, for them to PGA Tour just to go and merge with them. I don't know. It's pretty, disappointing from a moral standpoint, but it's hard, when someone puts so much money in front of your face, hard for these guys to say no matter where the money comes from. So we haven't heard from a lot of the golfers. I see like Rory trending on Twitter. So a lot of people want to know what he's feeling. And then we'll get into this with Fienberg, but it's more also, the top guys are going to be fine, but maybe it's those fringe guys who didn't go and take the bag, who now are like, well, what did I stand up for here? If the PGA Tour, what's the head, Monahan, if he just caved and went into this, so they could avoid all these lawsuits? They didn't want to fight for what was right, and they just took the money regardless?
Well, the litigation for sure is part of it. I mean, there was litigation on both sides, and with that comes discovery. And I was listening to SVP on McAfee earlier today, and he pointed out that I'm sure there was partly some hopes that they could keep some things out of the public eye. So maybe that pushed this forward. But at the end of the day, it's the unlimited cash that the Saudi Public Investment Fund have. Now, and your point about how players are feeling, I mean, most of the players are pissed. I mean, they're pissed that what they've gone through was seemingly for nothing. And they're also pissed at the way that they found out. Here's Mac Hughes, one of Canada's top golfers, getting ready for his National Open. Probably there at Oakdale this morning, working through, his routine, and then the phone goes off. Here's what he had to say. Nothing like finding out through Twitter that we're merging with the tour that we'd said we'd never do that with. And then he tweets after that. Curious to hear what golf fans think of this news. Tell me what you think of all this. I agree the best players should be playing together, but we were so dead against it as a whole on our side, and now to be doing this just doesn't feel right, but I don't know all the details. And he's just one of many. I saw Colin Morikawa tweeting, interesting morning on social media or something to that extent. And Justin Thomas tweeted out a GIF. He goes, and I was actually having a good practice session this morning, and just showing a phone going off with literally a million texts. There still is not a lot of clarity as to what this means. The PGA Tour, and I would imagine there will be some pushback to this. Through this, the LIV entity will still be there. The PGA Tour will still be there. There will be a way for some of the guys that went to LIV to reapply with a fine to come back to the PGA Tour. But it seems like there's going to be, a way for guys to basically play both. And listen, that'll be great for the best players in the world. You do wonder what this means for that second and third tier of players. And whether most of the money will be funneled into the top players in the world. I mean, the DP World Tour survives out of this, and this is unique. And of course, Aaron Cockrell, who's from Winnipeg, has had such a great year on the DP Tour. there was a path to get to the PGA Tour from DP, which is the European Tour. How that works out, how that affects those players, who's on LIV. And then of course, Remo, who's going to be on the range goats next year? Will Victor Hovland get drafted by the High Flyers? How LIV looks going forward. The bottom line is Jay Monahan basically secretly went behind. Who are the guys that are the owners of the tour, which is the players, and did this. I can't remember anything like this in my lifetime. And there's so many nuances to it. But the bottom line, Reem, is, and I tweeted this out, I have not been more stunned at a sports story coming seemingly out of the blue, maybe in my life, than this right now. We won't spend a lot of time on it. As I said, Fienberg is there, where there is a PGA Tour players meeting happening this afternoon at 4 p.m. Jay Monahan, I understand, is at the Canadian Open, and he will speak. And this is just the start of one of the most incredible and explosive stories in a long time. But I think we knew that a lot of that sanctimonious things, standing up for principles and whatnot, was basically bullshit from the PGA Tour, at least the guys running it, until the money got big enough to make sense to merge with him. By the way, no sign of Greg Norman. He might be done as well.
Yeah, and I asked you, more stunned than when Bob McKenzie tweeted out this trade is 1-for-1 Adam Larson for Taylor Hall. You were more stunned than that, because we were live when that went down and the PK Subban trade happened. That was one of the crazier summer days. And here we are, June 6th, with some big news. And I do wonder, we'll have to wait to hear more details, but, I think it was definitely disappointing if you've been on Team PGA Tour this entire time.
No doubt about it. All right, as I say, I could talk about this and probably will be talking about this for weeks and months. But we'll have Mark Zecchino on the program tomorrow. We'll be fascinated to hear. He, of course, works with PGA Tour Radio, very connected in golf on both sides of the border. In short term, like what this means for the Canadian Open. And I'm not sure whether Rory's been seen on site yet. Is Rory going to be there today? Anyway, Z-Man's going to come on tomorrow. We've got a great hit with Fienberg a little later on with a very special cameo, so do not miss out on that. But Remo, let's get to, you mentioned that trade. We'll kind of confirm that details and the money going either way, but there is a championship series going on right now. And that series is 2-0 heading to South Florida after the Vegas Golden Knights waxed the Florida Panthers last night to the tune of 7-2. And I'll tell you what, I'm not sure that game really was a 7-2 game. It seemed like Vegas, made the most of a few opportunities, getting them upstairs and got an early lead on Bob. And I don't know whether there was a magnet or something in Aiden Hill's glove, but they seemed to be shooting nonstop. And I was in a bar, and literally you could hear different groups around going, are they shooting at his glove on purpose? Or there was a magnet in there? I don't know. Vegas didn't make the most of their scoring opportunities, and Florida didn't. And credit to the Vegas defense for blocking a lot of shots as well. But this one was almost out of hand, and I thought it was going to get out of hand when Matthew Tkachuk nearly ended Jack Eichel with one of the most devastating hits you will see in a playoff game. And then things sort of disintegrated, although the refs were in real prevent. They were playing prevent defense last night, handing out 10s to anyone that looked each other the wrong way. We'll get to that later on, but first of all, your thoughts on the game, just a waxing by Vegas. And man, they are absolutely in control. 2 wins away from their first ever Stanley Cup.
Yeah, it seems like the Cinderella dust is wearing off on the Florida Panthers, and you talk about the layoff for Bob. What is the scoring 7? We got pulled yesterday, but Vegas, putting on a clinic. And Vegas is so well structured defensively, so strong. A lot of this though, special teams huge. Panthers 0 for 7 in 2 games on the power play, while Vegas, they were 2 for 7 in game 1, and yesterday they were 2 for 4 on the power play. So I think we're going to be planning a lot of Stanley Cup parties here in Manitoba. I think this is over. I don't know who the next discussion, who's going to be the Conn Smythe is it Jonathan Marchessault, who's on this huge heater here, having 3 points again yesterday. And I do want to give credit. You mentioned that Tkachuk hit on Eichel. I mean, Vegas won 7-2, but all anyone is talking about is this Tkachuk hit. Eichel going up the middle and Tkachuk, seeing it and just a perfectly clean hit. Thankfully, Eichel saw him at the last second, was able to kind of get out of the way a little. And credit to Eichel, who went off and then came back and had a beautiful assist to Marchessault at the start.
First shift back in the third period.
Yeah, that was shades of off the floor on the board, the Gary Thorne call on when Paul Correa scored. Now, look, Eichel didn't have a concussion. It wasn't knocked out, but it was still a pretty big hit. And for him to come back and just keep giving her.
Man, that was like Mick Foley in Hell in the Cell, where he was like on, he's dead, it's over. He's on the stretcher. They wheel him all the way back to the dressing room. And then all of a sudden he runs back out and is right back in it. I thought Eichel was done. I mean, we were just worried that, he wasn't really seriously hurt. And of course, he had that groundbreaking neck procedure operation on his neck that was a issue with him in Buffalo and basically led to him leaving the Sabres. But hey, he toughed it out, came back, realized he got rocked, and what can you do about it? You go back, get back out there, and make something happen for your team. It did disintegrate a little bit in the second half of the game. But going back to the early part of the game, Vegas making Florida pay for their lack of discipline, I'm sure was something that Bruce Cassidy recognized was was something they had to do if they wanted to win it. And I don't know about many of you Jet fans, but I was getting deja vu to the early Jets under Paul Maurice. When he came in, he really installed a bite in the Winnipeg Jets that frankly we didn't see as the team changed and matured a little bit, probably because they had to. But you will all recall the Jets were one of the most penalized teams in the league. And Maurice, and there's a reason for it. He wanted them to be tough to play against. He wanted them to play on the edge, and they did that. But unfortunately, they just spent way too much time on the box. And then when you whine at officials and are complaining all the time, which certain players on the Jets did quite a bit, then you don't get any of the benefits of the doubt. And Maurice spent a good period of time trying to almost reform the image of the Winnipeg Jets to a team that wasn't always on the wrong end of the penalties. But this Florida Panthers team, they play with bite. And, you add in a guy like Matthew Tkachuk and a Sam Bennett, Lombard. I mean, they are guys that are more than willing to take that extra shot to play right on that edge. And I couldn't help but think about the Knights at the end of the game. I was unsure as to how they would react to that hit on Eichel. They just went out and took care of their business, and it seemed to really frustrate Florida, especially when you think about that hit Barbashev put on Gudas in the first period. And man, what a statement hit that was. Arguably, potentially some head contact, and Maurice didn't really get into that after the game. But this is a team, Vegas playing very, very disciplined, Florida not so much, and even worse, not being able to kill their penalties when they take them. And that was, to me, the difference last night.
Yeah, and you mentioned Ivan Barbashev. I want to give a shout out to Ken Reeb, who I don't think anyone talked about Ivan Barbashev from November to the trade deadline more than Ken. Definitely. And you look at, he's among the Golden Knights scoring leaders. He put that hit on Radko Gudas. He's played, anywhere in their lineup. They made one acquisition, Ivan Barbashev, and he's been fantastic for them. And he's a free agent. He's going to get a huge deal. And, Ken always mentioned what the hate he put on Sam Girard in last year's playoffs, knocking him out. And then he had the hit on Gudas yesterday, clean hit, knocking him out. Although, I don't know if you ask Paul Maurice, he may disagree.
It was borderline. Listen, Gudas was sort of low. And I think that's why maybe some of that head contact maybe happened. But he got absolutely destroyed. And Gudas, is one of those players. I was mentioning, there's a bunch of guys on Florida that like to play on the edge. Well, he plays well over the edge quite a bit of time. And we all remember his executioner act with the guillotine chop on Matthew Perreault. poor Perot, was out, and he got suspended 10 games for that, if I recall correctly. So there's a lot going on. Bottom line is they have not done enough to beat Adin Hill consistently. And then when you add in the fact that Hill seems to be, like every year, there seems to be one goalie that just gets on some sort of magic carpet ride. And right now, that guy is Adin Hill. I mean, things are going through his legs. He's getting goals. His teammates are saving goals. It's bouncing off, the post behind him and then back through his legs going forward. I mean, everything is coming up Vegas right now. But this Adin Hill story and what he's been able to do for the Vegas Golden Knights against Bob, who had been so brilliant, really, I thought he was pretty good in game 1 too, but especially coming in until he got the hook for Alex Lyon last night. Adin Hill has been, he's right now getting into that conversation for the Conn Smythe Trophy, and who could have possibly imagined that when Laurent Brossoit started the playoffs. Kind of funny that LB started for Vegas and Lyon started for Florida, and here we are in the Cup Final.
Yeah, Adin Hill, a UFA after this season. I imagine he's going to cash in, much like Darcy Kemper did after winning the Cup last year. It's funny how these teams with these goalies, not superstar goalies, could be back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. And the other side, you have Bob making $10 million a year. Here's Adin Hill's stats in the playoffs, Sus, if you think he's Conn Smythe worthy. Is it possible for him to be he's got 9 wins right now. Brossoit has 5. So, max at, 16? So he could only get 11 of the 16. But he's got .937 save percentage and 2.06 goals against. I mean, that .937 is otherworldly, number for save percentage. But when they seem to be shooting the puck, into his glove, whatever, making him look good. But he's making the saves, and we saw it in game 1 with that diving stop. But he's been awesome, and I do wonder if we're going to see more team. Which way are teams going to go? We had this conversation. Well, do you need to have a star goalie to make the finals, or is it, pay your defense, have good structure, and you can put any goalie back there? I think Colorado kind of did that last year and this year. They did Colorado a number of injuries this season in the playoffs. They weren't as deep as last year's team, but you look at Vegas, they plugged any goalie in there and they win. So I think, that theory might be more sustainable. Like, there's only 30 starting jobs in the NHL. You don't think there's more than 30 capable NHL goalies in the world?
Yeah, you've got to find them. I mean, there's a bunch of number ones that certainly sucked and didn't get the job done this year. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, the legitimate number ones, though, it's a pretty small group, and that's why we're hearing so much interest in potentially acquiring Connor Hellebuck, and why a large section and portion of Jet fans are loath to even consider that possibility. Because we've got one of those guys here, and he really is the franchise player. Talk about this with Mike coming up. By the way, buried the lead a little bit. Did want to thank everyone. Got the notice today. We have surpassed 2 million views on YouTube, and I think we're over 2.5 million downloads for the podcast. So a sincere thanks from Michael and myself to everyone, the incredible sponsors that make this happen, the great guests that come on with us all the time, our regulars, and of course, most importantly, you, the listener. If you haven't already, hit that red subscribe button and make sure to find the podcast. Just search Winnipeg Sports Talk wherever you get your favorite audio podcasts and subscribe there as well. But onward and upward, thank you so much for the incredible support. Seen a bunch of mentions on that in chat, so just thought I'd get to that right away. Just before we bring in one of those guests, got to thank a few of our sponsors, including Modern Man Barbershop. Need a cut, folks, or maybe beard shaping, shaves, color services, and more? Modern Man Barbershops offer a variety of grooming services and the best in men's hair care products. 8 locations now for Modern Man Barbershops, including the 2 newest locations on Pembina Highway or Plessis Road. Book your look today. Make an appointment at modernmanbarber.com or follow them on Instagram at Modern Man Barbershops. Heat warning continues. If you haven't been in a pool, you're probably thinking about finding one. Great time to talk to our friends at Aquatech and make 2023 the year you take the plunge. Visit aqua-tech.ca to design your own custom pool, Their team can provide on-the-spot pricing from designers as well as financing options that suit you. And whole home renovations start with Aquatech. Thousands of renos is their foundation. Let them upgrade any space in your home. Aquatech's ready to make your reno dreams a reality. Learn more about design, pricing, and financing options at aqua-tech.ca. Another hot weekend coming up. We got the Bomber Home Opener. If you're heading out of town, make sure you get down to Manitoba Battery for all of your battery needs. Boats, Sea-Doos, ATVs, lawn tractors. You got to keep those suckers powered. And, of course, golf carts as well. Great deals right now as Manitoba Battery celebrates their 10th anniversary. Get to manitobabattery.com for all the latest deals. And the bottom line is you're going to be shopping local. You'll be saving big money as opposed to the big box stores. And Manitoba Battery will deliver those to you anywhere in the city of Winnipeg for free with every purchase over $60. Again, they're down at 1026 Logan Avenue and at manitobabattery.com. And just before we bring in Jay Dunk, of course, we've got the home opener on the weekend, and I know there was plenty of Canadian Club and ginger ales being enjoyed last Friday night in that heater for the preseason game. Well, there's a lot going on. They'll have some tastings at the Princess Auto tailgate party this year, and CC and Ginger six-packs are on sale for $14.39 this month wherever folks buy their drinks. You can pick those up at liquor marts or at vendors around the city. And, of course, Canadian Club's the official sponsor of the Bombers, and they'll be pouring lots of that on Friday as the Bombers host the Ticats. Speaking of the kickoff of CFL season, let's bring in our guy, Justin Dunk from 3 Down Nation. We're just about ready to get things going. Jay Dunk, how are you, my man?
Doing well, buddy. Jacked up for the start of the CFL season, as I'm sure you are too.
No doubt about it. Hey, just speaking, before we get to the regular season, noticed you and the guys at 3 Down have been all over those numbers. Pretty good preseason numbers for TSN last weekend. A lot of excitement for the 3 Down game to come back.
Indeed, and probably some fans out there wishing that TSN picked up some more preseason games. We'll see what happens in the future. But that Riders-Bombers game you were talking about that some people were enjoying beverages at IG Field last week did over 360,000. That, Hustler, was more than a handful of regular season games last year and even beat average weeks near the end of the season. So strong number. Obviously, whenever you have those two teams getting together, it's a good clash and the fans show out. But I think definitely it shows that the other Bombers preseason games should have been televised and the other Rough Riders game for sure to get numbers like that. Because when you have numbers like that, preseason, regular season, playoffs, Grey Cup, or whatever it is, you can make money off those numbers.
I mean, you follow this very closely. How big of a bump does TSN get when the Bombers or the Riders on? And is it those two teams that really show the huge audiences and then everyone else? Or how would you categorize the real teams that are draw audiences in the CFL going into this year?
Your audience might not want to hear it, but the Saskatchewan Rough Riders for years now, since I've been tracking this data, have been the absolute kings. You put
they
a
call
Riders
it
game
Rider
on,
Nation, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think Bomber Nation is definitely rising, but you put a Riders game on, you know you're going to get 500,000, if not more, especially when the team is going really well. And when there's excitement around the team, I think that was part of the reason for the strong number last week against the Bombers is because Trevor Harris was suiting up for green and white for the first time. Yes, it didn't count in the standings, but he was suiting up. So it's definitely the Rough Riders at the top. And the other team that's traditionally been really strong is the Bombers' opponent coming up this week in week 1, and that's the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And somewhat surprisingly, the Toronto Argonauts actually draw well on TV, even though a lot of the times they play at BMO Field, it looks like empty seats. So you put the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in there as well, and that Prairie bump is real. And when I say prairies, I'm more so referring to Winnipeg and Saskatchewan. So those over the last number of years, especially since the Blue Bombers have been really good, would be 1-2, would be Riders, Bombers. But the Tiger Cats can get in there, and the Argos are pretty strong themselves too.
You know, before we get into just your thoughts on the upcoming season and the teams to beat in the two divisions, and folks, if you're not regularly hitting up 3downnation.com, you definitely should be if you want the latest on the Canadian Football League. A couple interesting stories that you guys have up on the site, including the CFL partnering with Pro Football Focus to create player grades and analysis. PFF has been a leader in the National Football League for a number of years for very innovative and groundbreaking stats. I'm wondering what you know about how this came to be and what this means for both fans as well as teams and GMs when you're looking for quantitative analysis of what's happening on the football field.
It was something that was being talked about for a while, and I thought it would have been announced at least a couple months ago because people were talking about it at the combine, coaches, personnel people with the league, and they were really excited about it, that Pro Football Focus was going to dial in their analytics for CFL football because they really have a specific approach of how they go about grading players and breaking down games in the NFL and the NCAA. So the fact now that they're going to tailor that to the CFL game, I think is going to certainly bring more intrigue to fans in terms of getting a better picture of how a player actually affects the game overall beyond the stats that we see on your regular stat sheet. And then for the scouts and coaches, they can go even deeper or as deep probably as they want into these analytics in terms of how players affect the game. So I know it's sort of getting more and more prominent in various sports, the NHL, of course, Major League Baseball, and even the NFL. But when you have this other data, it gives you a better picture of the player. That's what I've been told from CFL scouts who have been talking about this as a positive for the league. I think it's great as a headline that the league has somebody in terms of accompany the status of PFF that wants to partner with them on this. And I think it will create more avenues for discussion about football among fans and help players and coaches and personnel people understand their impacts on the game.
Justin Dunk, 3 Down Nation with us. CFL Twitter was pretty juicy yesterday with Jonathan Kongbo's parting shot as he got traded. Fill everyone in on that if they missed it. And what did you think of getting some good social media stuff before we even get going on week 1?
It's always great to have drama in anything, Huss, as you know. And I think that's what's happened here with Jonathan Kongbo and the BC Lions. And I believe, from what I've heard, Kongbo is on point here with what he has said. He went in there with a championship mentality, of course, won a couple Grey Cups with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in 2019 and 2021, and then last year played with the Denver Broncos, so knows what it takes to play at a high level and get to the NFL. And he was challenging some players there that were maybe not showing up and putting in the work in the way that Kongbo felt they should. So I think that was the impetus for the trade. It didn't really seem like it was a fit, even though the Lions trumpeted this signing as bringing a local boy home. He was at least spending part of his childhood growing up in Surrey, BC. But I think the reason you see him being traded is exactly what he posted on social media and even what Keon Hatcher responded with in terms of not getting along in the locker room. Now, I don't think Kongbo's a bad culture guy because he would have been out of Winnipeg much quicker if that was the case. I think it is just literally here of Kongbo maybe calling out some players, as was alluded to. He didn't want to name any names, and those players, quite frankly, not liking it. So the Lions move on. They want to keep their locker room in a certain way. And I think, honestly, the Tiger Cats get a potential steal here with the talent that Kongbo has.
Kongbo obviously was traded. This is also a time where there's plenty of guys that are getting back on the available list. Here in Winnipeg, there wasn't a lot of drama through Bomber training camp, but we were interested to see whether Mark Leggio would stay on the roster as the punter. He's been let go. Do you think there'll be interest in him maybe in a couple of other spots? The rider kicking game didn't look very good on Friday, I'll tell you that much. And anyone else maybe that surprised you being released in final cuts around the league?
There was no real surprises, and that's Mark Leggio included. I felt like he was going to have competition in training camp and that he didn't necessarily live up to it. And when the Bombers brought back Sergio Castillo, I think that probably spelled the end, along with this global initiative and all the Aussie punters, it seems like, guys that are punting the heck out of the football, means Leggio doesn't have a job. The one name that's out there right now that I think could sign somewhat soon is Sean Lemon. And I think there's a handful of possibilities there for Lemon, who is closing in on 100 career sacks, was the West Division most outstanding defensive player last year for Calgary on a defensive line that led the league in sacks last year for the Stamps. He had signed with the BC Lions, but they released him after signing Jonathan Kongbo. And obviously that trade has been made. So you wonder if perhaps there's a reunion there with Lemon going back to BC and just as the way it was as training camp started, or I think there's legitimate potential for him to go to a team like the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, who could really have a scary pass rush on second and long situations and whenever they wanted. If they put Lemon on the field with Willie Jefferson and Jackson Jeffcoat. And I think there is some other possibilities out there as well in terms of maybe the Ottawa Redblacks bringing Lemon in to teach some of those younger defensive linemen they have. Obviously, Lorenzo Malden is really great, but Lemon's the one that I would keep an eye on, and I could see getting signed either before the season or when there's some early season injuries.
Why isn't he signed right now? I mean, he seems like such a difference maker. It's sort of, I mean, sometimes vets are like, yo, hit me up after training camp. I'll be good to go. Is that what it is? Or is he too expensive for some teams? I mean, listen, he'd look amazing in blue and gold right now. They lost Casey Sales. I think there is somewhat of a question as to, how the interior of that defensive line will look. Wasn't great in the game against Edmonton in their first preseason game. So you'll get some people excited with the Bombers' possibility adding to already a pretty ferocious front from Winnipeg.
I think really the reason that Lemon hasn't signed yet is because a lot of these teams brought players into training camp. There's still a little bit of movement, right? We saw Keenan LaFrance, for example, from the University of Manitoba get released by the Riders and signed by the BC Lions. So teams are evaluating some of the players that were released that were maybe surprises to them and looking at some of the younger players and thinking, well, we already got these guys here. We know what Sean Lemon brings. So let's see these guys play for a week or two. And then you know how it goes, Huss. If teams start the season 0-2 or 1-2 or 0-3, then you get a little bit of that pressure built up and you want to bring in a guy like Sean Lemon, especially if you're not getting after the quarterback. So I don't think it has anything to do with Lemon's skill set or being super expensive. I think it's just that teams might want to see the young guys that they have in place. And that's why I wouldn't be surprised to see something happen rather quickly when either there's an injury or somebody not playing up to the level that was anticipated to start the regular season.
Hey, Justin, one other question, just kind of big picture about the league. Everyone's talking about golf today because of the merger of PGA Tour and LIV, but I was watching on the weekend, the Memorial, and there's Jim Nantz pumping up the CFL opener on Thursday on the CBS Sports Network. What do we know about this deal with CBS? And in your opinion, I mean, is it a big win for the Canadian Football League? How's this going to work with their new partner south of the border?
I would categorize it as a small win for the CFL because they bump up in terms of the money that they're going to get from CBS. I believe it's in and around $1 million per year. And the deal they had with ESPN, I think, was in the neighborhood of a couple $100,000. So there's a boost there in terms of the actual monetary aspect for the league. And then I think the fact that CBS and CBS Sports are going to advertise these games, and we saw it with Jim Nantz. We did a post on the site about Nantz promoting that very game you talked about, Hustler, and it was one of our most trafficked pieces over the weekend because of Jim Nantz and the name that he carries, and obviously SEO plays a role in that as well. But when you have big voices like that talking about the CFL, it's going to draw extra attention. And that's one of the main things the league was looking for in a partner in terms of carrying television games in the United States, was somebody that was actually going to promo the games. There were people up here that felt like games just popped on down there, and that was the truth. And based on people you talked to south of the border who tried to watch games on ESPN2 or ESPN Plus or wherever those games happen to be, it's kind of what happened. So CBS is actually going to promo it, and they've already showed you that they're going to live up to their word doing it during the final round of the Memorial, which is one of the bigger golf tournaments on the golf schedule outside of the majors. So I think that's going to be a boon to the CFL. And ideally, the league would like to parlay that into a bigger deal down the road. which I think could be possible depending how the games rate on CBS Sports. And there's also the possibility, Huss, for the league to still sell some of their remaining inventory. There is about, I think, 30 games, maybe a little more than that are going to be on CBS Sports. So there's more to take from this season and beyond. It's not like they're locked into a deal. So that flexibility could benefit the league from a financial perspective in the future.
Good stuff. It'll just be them picking up TSN broadcasts, I assume. I mean, Nance won't be coming to Calgary or Winnipeg to be calling the games.
Maybe one day, but not yet.
Hey, let's look ahead to the season. The games start on Thursday. We've got the home opener here on Friday. Bombers, Ticats, cannot wait for that. When you look at the West Division and the league for that matter, but specifically the West, is it still everybody chasing the Bombers? And if so, who would you, on your preseason power poll, looking at the West Division, who's the biggest challenge to the three-time defending West Division champs?
Until you beat the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, they are going to be the team to beat in the West Division. I think they've proven that through 2019, 2021, and 2022, and probably should have 3 straight Grey Cups. And I think that fact that they lost such a tight game and they were heavily favored going into it, and a lot of people felt like it was going to be this great run. And if they won 3 in a row, I would have started calling them a dynasty, Hustler. I'm sure you would have too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we had said this was like, 2 in a row is the start of something special. You win 3 in a row, it's dynastic. You win 3 in 4 years and get to it and lose close game, I think we'll still say that. But it does feel like it's an unfinished business tour for a team that's bringing back the majority of a championship core that has been the measuring stick in this league for the last 3 seasons.
It really has been, and I would agree. If they win 3 Grey Cups in 4 seasons, then I would call this Winnipeg Blue Bombers team a dynasty. You have Zach Collaros back at quarterback, 2 straight MLPs on his resume. He is, right now, until proven otherwise, the best player in the CFL. Kenny Lawler, whenever they're going to get him back in the lineup after he deals with these lingering legal and passport issues, I think is going to be a great ad for this team. Put him out there with Dalton Schoen and the rest of the guys in this receiving core that I think have a lot of upside and experience. More importantly, this offense could be pretty scary from a passing standpoint. Brady Oliveira had 1,000 yards on the ground last year. I think the offensive line is super solid. And then we know the guys on defense: Willie Jefferson, Jackson Jeffcoat, Adam Bighill, Deatrick Nichols in the secondary. These are guys that play at an elite level. So I think it's Winnipeg and everybody else in the CFL. And honestly, I don't want to get too carried away here from one preseason drive, but there is a feeling of a entirely different Saskatchewan Roughriders team than a year ago. And Craig Dickinson said as much, that they're getting along better. I think this team is more cohesive based on what we've heard in training camp. We'll see once they have to start dealing with wins and potentially some losses. But I think the Rough Riders are going to be a contender for the Blue Bombers, but the team that I don't think people are talking about enough are the Calgary Stampeders. Jake Maier is an up-and-coming pivot. I know Winnipeg fans have seen him come into IG Field and almost beat the Bombers as a very young and inexperienced quarterback. And Calgary scored the most points in the league last year, Hustler, and nobody's talking about it. Like, we're talking about a team that, yes, had a transition from Bo Levi Mitchell to Maier, and that's why Maier is now the face of the franchise. But he is a guy that I think has a lot of upside, and we've seen Calgary make these moves under John Huffnagel and Dave Dickinson in the past, that when they have a guy that they're backing, it usually pays off. So you got Maier there at quarterback. You have Kadeem Carey, arguably the best running back in the league at running back, and you got a couple guys behind him that could start elsewhere in this league at running back. You have Malik Henry, who can get vertical in a hurry. You got Reggie Begelton out here talking about he wants 4 receivers in the Stamps receiving core to get 1,000 yards, and Begelton is usually pretty quiet and not outwardly confident. So I think that speaks to his confidence and his passer and the rest of the receiving core. That defense, I think, is underrated under Brett Monson as a defensive coordinator, and they get arguably the best coverman, I should say, back in Trey Robertson, who is healthy for this team. So I don't think enough people are talking about the Calgary Stampeders, maybe because it's the ABC effect out there, anybody but Calgary, and there's so much hate from the Stampeders usually being that team that sets the standard, but it's still Winnipeg and then the rest in the West.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you on Calgary. I mean, right off that management group at your own risk, because they seem to make the right decision more often than not. And Well, we'll be talking about a guy that is no longer a Stampeder in just a second. We'll see him on Friday. But I did quickly want to ask you about the Elks and the Lions. Tons of free agent additions with Chris Jones's club. But do they have the quarterback to win? Do you expect them to be much better? And how big, if any, of a step back do the Lions take without Nathan Rourke this year, now as a Jacksonville Jaguar?
I'll go to the Elks first, and the major question mark there for me is Taylor Cornelius. It seems like Trey Ford and Kyle Axley were in a heated battle there for the backup quarterback job. And, if Cornelius goes on a dry stretch and doesn't play very well, we've seen Chris Jones have quick hooks with his quarterback. So I think he needs to come out playing well against a Rough Riders defense that I think is underrated. They're going to see in week one. Yes, they spent a lot of money on receivers, Geno Lewis and Steven Dunbar in there, and Dylan Mitchell's out here talking about going for 2,000 yards, but he ain't Alan Pitts, and Alan Pitts ain't walking through that door anytime soon. So I have a hard time seeing Dylan Mitchell get to 2,000 yards as talented as he is. And they have Kevin Brown. I think the offensive line is solid. They got Jake Cerezo on the defensive line, but the defense just isn't quite there for me yet to compete at the top of the West Division. I think the Elks arrow could be trending up, and they have found some young talent that they like, but I think it's yet to emerge. And as for the BC Lions, Vernon Adams Jr. played really well last year when he was acquired via trade, and Nathan Rourke was out with that foot injury. And as you mentioned, now he's gone to the Jaguars. So I think under Jordan Maximic, who's a really smart offensive coordinator, a guy that I think should be starting to be talked about as a head coach in this league, if he hasn't already in those circles, will tailor the offense to Adams Jr. And I think he can play really good football, but we don't know if he can do it for an entire season. It's one thing to come in as sort of that backup dude behind Rourke, because everybody was talking about Rourke coming back for the playoffs, and he played really well, essentially on one foot, and almost got to the Grey Cup in that tight West Final loss. But I see the Lions taking a step back for a couple of reasons, and the main one would be Nathan Rourke and also the retirement of Brian Burnham. That guy really held that team together, and I don't think we'd see people going at each other on social media after a trade if a guy like Brian Burnham was still on that team.
Great stuff. Listen, we got to run, but is Hamilton the team to beat in the East? I'm high on Bobby Dice. I think the Ottawa Red Blacks are going to surprise people as long as Masoli plays. But what do you make of Bo Levi and the Hammer and the team we're going to be seeing to kick the season off here on Friday night?
There's a lot of hype, and rightfully so, around the Ticats, but Bo Levi Mitchell's got to show he can still do it for an entire season. He's got a big chip on his shoulder after being let go by Calgary, and technically he was traded, but they did move on from him during the middle of last season. So I don't think the Ticats should be the favorite in the East Division going into the regular season. I actually think it should be the Toronto Argonauts. Yes, I know Chad Kelly's a quarterback, but that's a loaded group that has a lot of depth. And if Chad Kelly plays even decent football, I think the Argos could win the East. The Tiger Cats could certainly do it. And if Jeremiah Masoli is healthy, then I think the Red Blacks have a shot. I really like their offensive line and defensive line, which maybe isn't sexy to talk about, but those groups could be really stout and help the Red Blacks rebound.
Dunk, this has been awesome having you on the program. Cannot wait for the weekend to get these games going. Fill people in on what you and our pal John Hodge have cooking at 3 Down Nation heading into the season and what people can enjoy all year long.
You bet, man, and appreciate being on your platform as well and talking some CFL ball. We're actually going to delve into something that you're familiar with, Hustler, a bunch of betting. I'm looking at the passing leaders and some of the value bets there. So check out that. It'll be up Wednesday morning on the site. And then we're going to be just checking out all these games and getting you primed up for the CFL season. And you know how it is, Hustler. We'll always have the latest news at the site. So check us out multiple times a day.
You guys do such a great job, and we appreciate you coming on. Enjoy week 1 of the Canadian Football League schedule. Dunk will talk to you soon.
Sounds good, buddy. You too.
Beauty. There is Justin Dunk. You can follow him on Twitter as well, at JDunk12. All right, Mike McIntyre coming on in just a second. Well, barbecue season is here, folks, and if you're looking for the best selection of local products, grass-fed bison and beef steaks, and great prices on natural and organic supplements, beauty products, and groceries, you need to get on down to one of 7 Vita Health Fresh Market stores. And hey, Father's Day is around the corner. Men's health is, of course, top of mind. Garden of Life has created some unique formulas like Prostate Protect and Once Daily Men's. Both contain 50 billion beneficial bacteria to support men's gastrointestinal health. Get on down to Vita Health Fresh Market, 7 Winnipeg locations, empowering people to lead healthy lives. And you can shop online with local delivery options over at myvita.ca. Folks, if you got fencing or overhead door needs, only one place to go, and that is the specialist Wallace & Wallace, who've been doing it in Winnipeg since 1946. If you need the security and protection of a new fence or winter did a number on your old one, give them a buzz. They got vinyl, ornamental, welded wire, chain link, or wood options for you. And if it's time to replace your garage door, they're the Clopay dealer in Manitoba with Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors. 452-2700 is the number to set up a visit for a free estimate. You can also visit them online at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Road off of Kenniston. Fellas, how's the closet looking heading into summer? If you need to up your menswear game with wedding season just around the corner, now's the time to do it at F Apparel. Custom suits beginning at $400, chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories. If you do need suits for the boys for a wedding party, 15% off when the party gets your suits from F Apparel, and a free custom shirt and tie for 2023 high school grads with the purchase of a new suit. They're down at 190 Smith Street downtown. Make an appointment at F, that's EPHapparel.com. And just before we bring in Mike, the heat warning continues, and I'm here for it. And I'm also here for a trip to Nick and Nicky DQ tonight for one of those summer blizzard flavors. Pop down and see him. DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, DQ St. Anne's, and DQ Niverville. And, of course, you can hit them up at DQ Manitoba if you need a DQ ice cream or blizzard cake for an upcoming event. They'll get it ready for you for a quick and easy pickup at any of the four Nick and Nicky DQs. All right, let's get to Mike McIntyre because we have a lot to get to today. Mike, listen, I want to talk hockey. I want to talk Jets off-season. But, I mean, you've covered Aaron Cockrell and done some great work with he is at the RBC Canadian Open getting ready to play in this big PGA Tour event. What was your reaction when you heard the news this morning that the PGA Tour and LIV were merging?
I had to check that it wasn't April Fool's, that it wasn't some kind of satire article, the Onion or the Beaverton or whatever. I was stunned. I mean, because the PGA has been so vocal in its distaste of everything LIV. You've had people like Rory McIlroy who have basically been paraded out as the face of the PGA to take on the LIV tour, and now must feel like they've sold their souls and kind of put a shiv in the back of players like Rory McIlroy. And to hear that the players were completely, submarine by this, that they learned about it just like we all did via social media. I mean, that just adds another layer of absurdity to it. And I can only imagine, Huss, I think it's 4 p.m. Eastern time today at the RBC that Jay Monahan is holding a players meeting. And imagine if that could be live streamed. You could probably make some LIV type money by streaming that on pay-per-view, because I imagine that is going to be one heated meeting between the players and the commissioner. A lot of players no doubt feel like, they've sold out. And I was stunned. Isn't it funny, Huss? 1 year ago today, I was actually in Toronto for the RBC. That's when Aaron Cockrell was about to make his PGA Tour debut. And if you recall, that was the very first LIV event was about to get underway. So the LIV Tour was the talk of the RBC a year ago. Fast forward for today, and it's deja vu all over again, albeit in a much different way. Just a seismic merger in the golf world, and I'm really anxious to see how this plays out in the coming days and weeks.
And you know what I mean? There's not a ton of details, and again, the players were completely blindsided by this. Yeah. I mean, I was mentioning what Mackenzie Hughes had tweeted earlier today. Adam Hadwin spoke, and our pal Geoff Fienberg, who's going to join us a little bit, he's hanging out it's at his home course, so right. He's all over the place. He said, Hadwin, I found out about the merger this morning from an email and then another email from Jay. I don't know how to feel. It says, what's transpired with the rhetoric on both sides? How did we get here now? So many details he doesn't know. And I guess for a player like Adam Hadwin, who has been, a regular on the PGA Tour for a number of years, but not quite in that super elite level, I do wonder about that second and third tier of golfers. Yeah. And then guys like Aaron Cockrell, who've been playing their way presumably to the PGA Tour, trying to earn that opportunity through the DP. In some ways, this might save the European Tour, but I do wonder what this means for the guys that aren't Rory McIlroy or John Rahm or Colin Morikawa. They're going to be fine and stinking rich regardless of how everything shakes out.
Yeah, and let's be clear. I'm sure a lot of regular folks aren't going to be feeling sorry for multi-millionaire PGA golfers, but how do guys who turn down the LIV and the guaranteed money that we know some of their colleagues went and took, and now they're faced with a scenario where they held their ground, they stood firm, and they're potentially going to see now these colleagues welcome back with open arms, with much deeper bank accounts than when they left. It just raises so many questions and just so many potential scenario. What's Brandel Chambly going to say about this? Like, there's a guy who...
That's the first thing I did. I mean, I think I need to turn on notifications on for Chambly as to when he weighs in on this, because he, Eamon Lynch from Golf Week, I mean, there had been no more passionate and outspoken critics of LIV. And in a lot of ways, they were seen as, in the bag of the PGA Tour, much like Rory McIlroy and all these guys that have been defending everything on principle. I guess the principles don't mean that much when the bag got that much bigger.
For sure. Did you see Brooks Koepka's tweet, Huss?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, welfare check on Chambly. He said, I'm really eager to hear Rory McIlroy speak. Like, Rory, of course, is kind of the face of the PGA Tour, right? And I think he's waved the flag. He's defended the turf. And I gotta think Rory must feel like the tour kind of stabbed him in the back and sold him out. And so, Rory's a guy who wears his emotions on his sleeve. I imagine that he's going to have plenty to say about this, and I'm really anxious to hear what it is. But yeah, huge shift in the golf world. And who knows, maybe we look back on this a few years down the road and say, ultimately was for the best. I think we could all agree, Huss, regardless of what you thought about LIV, fracture is never good. I mean, we saw what it did if people that were fans of boxing, right, in its heyday. We saw what fractured boxing, organizations, foundations, what that did to the sport. And so I think we all want, in all sports, you want the best of the best to kind of be playing under one roof, and that wasn't happening. So maybe there's a silver lining to this. It's just hard to see that today.
Yeah, listen, there's going to be a lot of money coming in. It just it was all about principle. It was all about not selling out. And then, I mean, I thought Scott Van Pelt actually said it very well. Where is this? I just had this a little earlier. SVP, who of course broadcasts PGA events for ESPN, said, so you preach loyalty to a tour and convince guys not to take 8 and 9 figure deals based in part on that loyalty and in part on the source of the money. Then those guys find out on Twitter, you took the very same money?
Right.
I mean, it's pretty tough. Just quickly, because again, this is all going to get overshadowed by what everyone's talking about. And really too bad for the Canadian Open, although there'll certainly be a lot of eyes on everyone there. Fill people in on what our boy Aaron Cockrell's been up to lately, and this great opportunity for him on the PGA Tour again after having his best results ever and coming so close to getting in that winner's circle on a pretty darn good tour overseas.
Yeah, he's certainly coming into this week's RBC Canadian Open with a lot more confidence than he would have a year ago. There was excitement a year ago, of course, great opportunity, and Aaron ended up making the cut. Cashed a check, got to play on the weekend. At one point on the weekend, I think he was the low Canadian in the RBC. But you're right, Huss. He's having a terrific year on the DP Tour. He's actually spent the last few weeks back in Winnipeg with his family, their newborn, and his wife, and they're all now in Toronto, of course. But yeah, he's last I looked, he was 23rd on the DP order of merit. So he's knocking on the door. He's at a career best in terms of world golf ranking, and it would be great to see him kind of carry that into one great week on a PGA event can be life-changing. Aaron's actually going to get 2 other cracks. He's got 2 more sponsors exempts in PGA events coming up this summer. I think one in Kentucky and one in California later coming up. So he's got some opportunity here to maybe really make some hay a little closer to home than what he's been doing overseas. But yeah, he's I've said it many times. Aaron Cockrell's just a terrific human being. You like to see good things happen to good people. He's at the top of the list, and I know I'll be rooting for him here this week as he tees it up with some of the best in the game.
Hey, who knows? A couple more good results, and he could end up on the Majestics or the Range Goats next year.
you never know. Oh, boy, yeah. I mean, who knows what the future holds for team golf and if they incorporate that into the PGA eventually.
Hey, Mike, before we get to just the kind of Jets off season, some NHL stories, what have you thought about the finals so far? And, man, Vegas just looked so composed last night. I really thought after the hit from Tkachuk, where he absolutely destroyed Jack Eichel, albeit very clean, that maybe that was going to completely disintegrate into mayhem. And the Vegas Golden Knights, I think more so probably because Jack Eichel was able to come out, right? Whatever, pick yourself up. And it's easier to maybe do it with a 4-0 lead the way they had it. And then, of course, Florida scored early on. But they're showing incredible composure. And I was saying earlier on, the lack of discipline of this Florida Panthers team reminds me of the Winnipeg Jets early on in the Maurice years, where he was trying to instill that in the team and then really did need to dial it back and try and make a truce with NHL officials.
Well, and that's where, I think Paul Maurice probably deserves some criticism. You see him behind the bench, these first 2 games. At times, Paul Maurice looks unhinged, and his players are playing accordingly. He's got to rein them in, and we haven't seen that so far. And the Golden Knights are certainly making the Panthers pay on the power play and just keeping their composure. And it's fascinating. Somebody tweeted out a stat last night, Huss, of what Vegas has done to the goaltenders that they faced in every series. All of them are sub 900 save percentage. Like the Golden Knights, doesn't matter who's in net, whether it was Connor Hellebuck, Stuart Skinner, Jake Ottinger, and now Sergei Bobrovsky, who coming into this series, everyone was talking about for the Conn Smythe. There was even talk, even if Florida loses, maybe Bobrovsky wins the Conn Smythe. Well, he's been kind of rendered mere mortal now. And for some reason, Vegas, they have that effect on teams. Certainly in this playoff run, they're bringing these good goaltenders down to earth rather quickly. And, Bruce Cassidy said it after the game last night that he thinks Vegas 1-20 is the deepest team in the NHL. And how can you argue with that? When you look at, Huss, they got guys like Phil Kessel, the NHL's Iron Man, who can't even get into the lineup right now. Teddy Bluger, who is a pretty good trade addition that I'd say would be right at home on most 3rd or 4th lines in the NHL. He's a healthy scratch. Part of that is the Golden Knights. Sure, they've been healthy. They've avoided any significant injuries in these playoffs. They got a great back end, and they got a system that they play that doesn't seem to matter what goaltender is in there, whether it's LB, whether it's Aiden Hill, that they're pretty solid in front of. So the old saying, you're not in trouble till you lose a game on home ice, I guess is important to remember, because the Panthers haven't lost yet on home ice here. But obviously Thursday night will tell the tale whether this is going to be a series. It's a must win for the Panthers. They drop game 3. This series is done. But if they win, suddenly they got some momentum and maybe turn it into a series.
Mike, I was joking with the fellas that last night that the keeper of the cup,
yes,
I hope they enjoy Manitoba, because there's a good chance that the Stanley Cup could be spending a lot of time in the province this year. And we know it'll come to Winnipeg and Oakbank, with Colasar and Howden and, of course, Mark Stone. But it'll also, in all likelihood, be making a trip out to Sioux Valley First Nation if the Golden Knights get this done. I know you got a great piece in the Winnipeg Free Press on Zach Whitecloud. I mean, what a great story this young man is.
I talked to his dad yesterday. His dad, who's a counselor at Sioux Valley Dakota Nation, he's in Vegas now, heading to Florida for games 3 and 4. But he was at T-Mobile, and I asked him, Zach Whitecloud, his boy, scores the game-winning goal in the third period the other night. I said, "Did you have a good view of it?" And he said, "Well, I did." But then everybody jumped up and was screaming. And he said that he wasn't actually sure if Zach's shot went in or maybe it got deflected. But he said Nick Haig's dad was sitting beside him and started screaming at him, "Zach scored, Zach scored," as he looked up at the Jumbotron on the replay. So, yeah, terrific moment. And, Zach Whitecloud, like, what a story, right? Undrafted, was playing in the MJHL, like with Verdon, goes the college route. As his dad told me the other day, always been a late bloomer. And obviously, Kelly McCrimmon would have seen plenty of Zach Whitecloud, being a Western Manitoba guy himself. And he signs him to that free agent deal when the Vegas Golden Knights come into the league. And look at him now, right? He's 2 wins away from a Stanley Cup at the age of 26. And back in Sioux Valley, it's been a great. I talked to the chief of the First Nation yesterday, Huss. They're holding watch parties at the community hall. And just a raucous atmosphere. And Zach Whitecloud, he's a role model, in the community, obviously, to a lot of Indigenous youth to kind of see what he's done. And as I wrote in my piece today, the goal in game 1 was great. I think his best contribution in these playoffs is the way he handled himself after the ESPN announcer, deliberately butchered his name and made a joke about it in terrible taste during that second round series. And the way Zach Whitecloud conducted himself with, the class, and, he reached out to the announcer to say that he accepted his apology and had a lot to say about his upbringing. I just thought that was just a first class way of handling it, and speaks volumes about the man that Zach Whitecloud is.
Well, and it is, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, he is, he's turned into a hell of a National Hockey League player. Yeah. I mean, he's on a long-term deal at just south of $3 million a year. And he's playing a very, very important role in a team that's 14 of the 16 wins to the Stanley Cup. But when we talk about the Vegas Golden Knights, it's hard not, as Winnipeg Jet fans and people that watch the Winnipeg Jets, to kind of wonder. And we know Kelly McCrimmon has incredible roots in this province. So does everybody that's involved with the Winnipeg Jets. Right. We haven't seen any sort of local flavor, if you will, on this club for the most part, with a few exceptions on the periphery of the team, and certainly not very much through the draft. What can the Jets learn from this Vegas Golden Knights powerhouse that has so many players from our backyard?
Well, I think the lesson, and I wrote about this a week or so ago, sometimes the grass is greener in your own backyard. And, look, you can go through individual Jets draft picks in recent years, and it would be hard to quibble with what they've done. That being said, when you look at the makeup of the team, for example, the Jets seem to have a real fondness for Minnesota-born players, right? They've got a ton of them. And the Jets, I think Cheveldayoff has talked in the past about there's an appeal there. These guys like, playing close to home. Minnesotans do. And it's great. You drum up some interest, obviously, just south of the border in the Jets. But it's bizarre to me that they don't feel that way about players like way closer to home than even Minnesota, and that's here in Manitoba. And so you watch a guy like Brett Howden. Wouldn't Brett Howden look good in a Winnipeg Jets?
They did sign his brother at one point. That didn't go that well.
That didn't go nearly as well, no. But, I just think, and I did a column last summer where I looked at all the Jets drafts since they've come back to Winnipeg. And in their early years, Huss, like 2011, 12, 13, they were picking a lot of players from the dub. And obviously look at staples of their team right now. Josh Morrissey, Adam Lowry, two of their best, right?
Absolutely.
Leaders, heart and soul guys, the kind of guys you want to build a team around. But they've really gotten away from that in recent years. A lot of American players, a lot of European players. And look, you just have to see what's happened. Jets have had a lot of American players who didn't want to stick around, whether it's Jacob Trouba, Andrew Kopp, you could go down the list. And they've had a bunch of European players who've gone back to Europe. Christian Vesalainen, Mikkel Burden, Leon Gavanki most recently, a few weeks ago, goes back to Germany. Not that Gavanki and Burden obviously weren't established NHLers. Vesalainen wasn't really either. But
yeah, none of those guys are really NHLers. At a certain point, you got to make the team and
for sure. But when you're talking about a draft and develop organization and a team that has trouble attracting free agents, a team that's on a lot of no trade lists, it does boggle the mind that there isn't more of that there's not more fishing in the own backyard, whether that's Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, Western Canada. We just haven't seen it in recent years. I'll be interested to see, coming up in a few weeks at the draft, if the Jets maybe dip their toes into the dub waters a little more than they have.
Why do you think it got to that point? I mean, is that just a preference of the scouts? Or, is that sort of they almost feel like some of those players would have felt better under, for lack of a better term, the Blake Wheeler era as sort of the leader. And it wasn't just him. I mean, starting off, Mark Stewart was a guy that was absolutely beloved. I mean, he did end up getting bought out for that last year, but I mean, he was wearing an A right from 2021. I mean, there's always been big time personalities, and big leadership roles of this team that have been from Minnesota, and not as many or any really, from at least our area. I mean, does that play into it?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think from a leadership perspective, they probably felt like they were in good hands. And I think, and again, you look at the scouting department as a whole, there's probably a lot more European flavor to a lot of the scouting that they were doing. And no doubt there was a shift, Huss, to try and focus on getting more skill into the prospect pool, whether it was puck-moving defensemen or skilled wingers. And look, I'm not saying the Jets haven't had some great success. Nikolai Ehlers is a world-class winger. Nobody will quibble about taking a guy like that. Kyle Connor, 47 goals scorer. Nobody will quibble that they took an American that year, right? Connor Hellebuck, he's turned out pretty well as an American. So I'm not saying that the Jets, this isn't a Don Cherry-like sort of rant about, why don't they start taking more of these Canadian kids? But look, it's something that has been expressed to me on many occasions, including from some Western Hockey League scouts who are actually puzzled that the Jets don't lean a little heavier than they have towards that, especially when you look at where Kevin Cheveldayoff, Craig Heisinger, like that's where their roots are, right? These are local guys, Western Canadian guys who cut their teeth in the dub. And the Jets have gotten away from that. And I guess you could debate how successful it's been. In some cases, very successful, and others not so much. But yeah, I mean, we have no doubt that there's a lot of great hockey players being produced here in Manitoba. One just has to look at the Vegas Golden Knights this year for Exhibit A.
And I mean, listen, to be fair, longtime listeners know I've always been a proponent of, I don't care what the guy's passport is. I mean, give me the best player, give me the best player, but let's put the best players together, and it's on the coach and the organization to make that work. However, it is hard to ignore the facts that more often than not, there's a ton of Canadians on the Stanley Cup championship team. You look at the St. Louis Blues in 2019, the team that the Jets lost to in that first round, and the year that the Jets as a team completely imploded and arguably blew their best chance to really be Stanley Cup champions, and to be honest, started a downward spiral that, has gotten us to sort of where we are right now. I mean, there has been regression, but a lot of it was internal. I mean, the makeup of the team.
Right.
And then you look at the Vegas Golden Knights. And again, I mean, This isn't a team. I mean, yeah, Jack Eichel's an American, and he's a great, great player. I mean, they've got William Karlsson for the most part. I mean, this is a team that is built in the identity of what Kelly McCrimmon has been working with his entire life, and that is hard-nosed Canadian players, more often not Western Canadian players, and often Manitoba players.
Well, and when you look at the type of hockey that traditionally wins in the playoffs, it's that style of hockey, right? It becomes less of an elite skill and speed, may the most talented team win. No, that's not the case. It's the team that can weather adversity, kind of manage emotions, the ups and downs, and obviously a very hard-nosed, rugged style. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And it would appear, certainly Kelly McCrimmon has built a pretty solid foundation in Sin City, much of which contains some Manitoba roots. And it would appear that they are on the cusp of their first Stanley Cup, and it's hard to argue with the success that they've had.
Well, Mike, let's get over to the Jets. I mean, there hasn't been really any news out of Winnipeg for the last little bit. However, Elliot Friedman was on the intermission of Game 1, saying that, when it's kind of updates from around the league, of course, everyone's interested in what's happening in Winnipeg. A lot's expected, and they are listening to offers on Dubois, on Scheifele, and Connor Hellebuck, but then was very clear and reiterated a couple times that this is not a rebuild. Oh, what do you take from that, and why do you think? I mean, we know how this information gets put out. I mean, hey, this is what we'll tell you, but you have to make sure. I mean, it's very clear that the organization wants this out there in all caps. How do you interpret that?
Well, it tells me that the asking price the Jets have on certain players is not picks and prospects, but established, proven players. And preferably, that's a lot of P's, by the way, preferably players that have some term. Because if you're the Jets, of course, you're not looking at a rental in return for basically what might be your own rentals going out the door. You want players they're going to be here. So presumably you're looking at established players, but on the younger side with some term, as opposed to, gathering as many draft picks as possible or prospects that might be a year or two away and kind of starting over. So I don't know. I mean, it was interesting to hear Elliot say that. I wouldn't take that as earth-shattering news, Huss, because, again, you were down there as well at exit day. Elliot was basically saying what we kind of heard every player get up there and say, at least guys that are here, the Connors and the Ehlers and whatnot, they aren't interested. Nino Niederreiter said it as well. They're not interested in a rebuild. These guys that are here, and the Jets do have some very nice pieces already in place, even if you take away the guys that are big question marks right now. And then there's the question of this fan base and this market. They've launched a very aggressive push to get season tickets back where they once were. They had over 1,000 empty seats on average every game last year. And no doubt there would be concern in this market of how patient fans might be if they basically come out and say, we're not going to be very competitive for the next few years while we kind of rebuild and reset. Is that the best strategy? Well, there's a lot of teams out there that have tried and failed to kind of retool on the fly. So we'll see where this goes. But yeah, I mean, to me, the big takeaway is the Jets are asking for proven players and not picks and prospects when it comes to their big assets that are on the trade market. And isn't it interesting, Huss? The trade winds have started to blow today, which is unusual. The Flyers made one big trade with Provorov. There's word that Carter Hart is now on the verge of being moved as well, potentially. Usually you don't get this action while the Stanley Cup Final is still going on. So it'll be interesting to see if there's a trickle down, a domino effect that starts sooner rather than later. And the Jets, of course, are a team that many will have an eye on in that market.
Yeah. I mean, as far as those trades happening, I mean, I think that, I guess maybe it's a travel day and there's an extra day in between games. So if you're going to do it now. But back to, I mean, just those comments, and it's not a rebuild. Part of me does think that this is a message to, the fan base that, hey, I mean, I get it. And I believe that. I don't think that anything that they've said is wrong in the fact that there's enough talent on this club. And even if you move some of those players, like, they're not going to be sniffing around. Like, to get to the bottom of the league, you'd have to really overhaul a lot more than 2 or 3 guys on this club. But at the same time, if the message is trying to kind of excite and engage the fan base, you know how you do that? Make some significant moves. Go out and change things up, because, I mean, I don't need to tell you. You hear it all the time in your feedback from your columns on Twitter. We do it all the time. Like, this goes back to, unfortunately, 2019. And I really do think that within that organization, there is a realization that they need to move on from Blake Wheeler. They need to move on from Mark Scheifele. And unfortunately, at the same time, they're sort of being forced to move on, potentially, from Connor Hellebuck and from Pierre-Luc Dubois. And where does that leave the team? But like we talked with Dave Poulin yesterday, this is a real opportunity as well. And I'm not going to judge anything until all the dust settles. I know people are impatient. They want everything to happen right now. But I mean, I really think that, a good management group, and I hope that this is what Winnipeg has. They've got a plan A. This is what we'd like to see happen. But there's a plan B, C, D, and E, and a lot of things involving a number of different teams that is basically being executed right now, and we'll see how that all shakes out. But, I mean, anyone that thinks, and if there's anyone there that thinks that the fan base would react positively to just trying to keep this thing together one more time and then potentially lose guys for nothing, I mean, to me, that is complete insanity. And I don't think for a minute that that's what they're thinking in Kevin Cheveldayoff's office and in management.
No, I mean, we have to remember we're in a very savvy, smart hockey market. I think the majority of fans, they understand maybe what needs to be done and where things should go. And I think there's some patience here. I think fans in this market have been extraordinarily patient and loyal and supportive. So, I don't think there's panic buttons being pushed. I also wonder, Huss, if part of, what Elliott said the other night, there's probably some negotiating tactics. There's some strategy going on there. If you're the Jets, that's the message you obviously want to convey to other teams as well. That you're trying to drive the price up. You have these very valuable assets. The more teams that you can get kind of sniffing around, the more teams that you can get potentially making you an offer. I mean, that's what's going to create the best return. Ideally, if you're the Jets, you're going to have several proposals to kind of wade through, and it'll be a little like Christmas in that you'll kind of make out pretty good no matter which present you open first. The worst case would be that kind of your asking price is either too high or there's just no interest, and you don't get the offers, and then you're really kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. Now you've got these soon-to-be expiring assets or assets, and not a lot of demand out there, and that's where teams really go wrong. So, I think the Jets, they're probably testing the waters a little bit, and we'll see if they start getting any nibbles here in the near future.
And when it comes to these deals, I mean, I know there's a lot of people, in the chat that, there's a certain portion that are just, anti everything that Cheveldayoff does. There's some people that are maybe a little rosy on everything and where the team is at right now. But I think there's a far greater group, Mike, that, looks back and understands that, maybe this job's a little bit tougher than some of the others. Certainly, you didn't have Matthew Tkachuk say, hey, I want to go here and sign an extension and make those things. So there is unique challenges. But at the same time, when we look at the deals that Cheveldayoff has made overall, he's got a pretty good track record, especially when, maybe being cornered, for instance, the Jacob Trouba deal. Now, I will say this, and I've been saying it for a year and a half, I think they needed to be way more proactive with some of these moves, particularly involving Mark Scheifele in that core and whatever. That to me was a missed opportunity, and I don't think they're going to get back with what they have done. that being said, and this is something that Pooley said yesterday, this is a unique opportunity that, with a lot of things conspiring together to really reshape. And again, it's not rebuild, it's not retool. we went through about a dozen different words for what this is going to be. But at the same time, to make some deals right now, and again, I'm with you. I mean, younger players either with term or just, earlier on in their careers that maybe they haven't popped yet, and you've got more team control on that. But the other thing is that I think might or hopefully will play into Winnipeg's hand when making any of these trades is the fact that the free agent pool is so weak this year. And that's a very different story than next year at this time. And for teams that are looking like next year, we're really close. We need a guy like a Dubois, a Scheifele, a Hellebuck might have actually more value this year just because of a lack of other options when it comes to the free agent market.
Well, for sure. And even to bring up something you and I have talked in previous sports talks, even the blue line, Huss, whether it's a Neil Pionk or, if a team is in the market for an offensive puck-moving defenseman, like there's not a ton of those guys out there as UFAs. So it's a limited market, you're right. And I think that certainly works in Winnipeg's favor here as we head into kind of a critical few week span. It's remarkable. We sit here today talking on June the 6th. July 1st is not that far away. And, it's remarkable to think what the Jets roster might look like in 3.5 weeks or so from now compared to what we have today. And how different it truly might be. Like, this is a unique opportunity that Winnipeg has. And for sure, there's a lot of people that say Kevin Cheveldayoff shouldn't be in this position to begin with. You can scream that till you're blue in the face. That's not changing. He obviously has the blessing of ownership. He is the guy that's going to be making these decisions. And you're right, Huss. There's, you look at the Andrew Kopp trade. What ended up just being a rental for the Rangers, I'd say turned out pretty nicely. They got a nice piece in Morgan Barron. They got a great young prospect in Big Bad Brad Lambert. And they got another young defenseman that could be a force in a few years in Elias Salmonson. And again, that was just for a few months rental to the Rangers.
In 2 or 3 years, that trade, and I was speaking with somebody in player development for the goal. It was Jimmy Roy. I think I talked about this beforehand. And we were at a Moose game and just chatting, and I mean, he could not say enough good things about last year's draft class. I mean, there is a real hope that last year's draft class is a seminal one for the Winnipeg Jets. Now, is that going to help next year?
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And Salmonson, on top of it all, that, I mean, no one really knows much about because he's been playing over in Sweden. They might be as excited about him as any of the players that they've selected. But again, it's getting to that point, and it's great to, pick some of those players. But right now, it's quite clear that he will be judged on how this turns out. And particularly, I mean, what they do with Scheifele, what they do with Hellebuck. But Dubois made me more than any because, of course, Dubois is the guy that they got back for Patrick Laine, and you don't win lotteries and you don't get number 2 overall picks that score 80 goals as teenagers very often. Not to mention that popular in the market. So the opportunity is big, but the pressure is big as well. The stakes are high, as they say.
Yeah, if you're getting pennies on the dollar, you're not going to make out very well. So that's why a lot of pressure on what ultimately happens with Dubois. You mentioned last year's draft, of course, Rucker McGroarty, Brad Lambert, Salmonson, and then what might end up being a steal of the draft is Dominic the goalie, who just won the Ontario Hockey League Goaltender of the Year. You're right. That has the chance to be sort of 2015-esque when you look at what 2015 produced. Connor, they got Roslovic, they got Mason Appleton, Jansen Harkins, Sami Niku. And, in hindsight, maybe that draft, it looked a lot better a few years ago when they still had Roslovic here and Appleton and Harkins were just kind of coming into their own, and Sami Niku was the AHL Defenseman of the Year. But last year could be a time for kind of really replenishing the prospect pool. Of course, most of the focus, though, from fans, they want to win now, and that's where the focus turns for Kevin Cheveldayoff. And we'll see if today's trade or trades by the Flyers get the race going a little earlier than usual. And I'm fascinated, Huss, to see if Carter Hart gets traded. And there's rumblings that that something's in the works there. There's not a lot of top tier goaltenders on the trade market. And I'm curious to see what a Carter Hart trade could do in terms of Connor Hellebuck, and if there's a ripple effect there. So that'll be something to keep an eye on here in the coming hours and days.
No doubt about it. And hey, just one more as it pertains, because we were talking draft, and I cannot wait to get down to Nashville. That week could be as interesting a week as we've seen really in 12 years for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah.
But from your perspective right now, Mike, and I know this is not a rebuild, all caps, we can put it up. Do you think the Jets make just their pick at 18, or would you do you think that they may add picks through some trades that happen before we get to the draft floor at Bridgestone?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to be like significant picks that they add, because again, to me, that gets away from the idea then that leans more towards a rebuild. If you're adding, really high draft picks, well, there's some significant currency to a high draft pick. That you're not getting a high draft pick and a significant player or two that are going to help you win right now.
Yeah, but they might be trading 3 guys.
Well, for sure. And so to me, it's a bit of an either or. Like, either you're getting players that can help you win now if the idea is we're not doing a rebuild, or you're looking now, maybe we see a blend. Maybe we get a little bit of both. As you say, they've got a bunch of assets to move. So maybe we get an additional draft pick in the first round, but also some players that can kind of help in the here and now. So yeah, I wouldn't go to sleep on the fact that the Jets will only have 1 draft pick in that opening round. I think there's the potential certainly for more, based on how this plays out. And that's why, I think, Huss, if the Jets are going to make moves, it wouldn't surprise me if they actually happen well in advance of the draft, as opposed to like that day on the draft floor. And now that could still happen. I just wonder if it's more likely that in the day or days before the draft is when we start to see the pieces fall into place. Like Mike, we did with Jacob Trouba a few years ago.
Yeah, no doubt. Mike McIntyre's with us. Mike, before we go, there's a lot of rumblings around the hockey community that are getting a little louder involving. We started off talking about the Western Hockey League. We'll come back to it. Have we seen the last of the Winnipeg Ice in this city after this great season they just finished?
Well, funny you ask, Huss. I'm actually writing about that very thing today. And you're right. I mean, there's some rumors out there that perhaps the Vancouver Canucks organization is getting involved and in a potential purchase of the ice. It's difficult to get anybody right now to kind of talk about where things are at. My understanding is there's a pretty significant Board of Governors meeting that's coming up later in June. And that likely at that point, there's going to have to be kind of a fish or cut bait scenario with the ice. So, I mean, I've heard a number of different scenarios, whether it's just 1 more year, buying a little more time, or 0 more years, or something longer term. I don't know which way I'd lean right now. All I know is that there's a lot happening behind the scenes. It's a very fluid situation, and time is very much of the essence, as it were, Huss.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have seen, a couple of, just ads on Twitter for season tickets for next season here in Winnipeg. But at the same time, I've also heard and confirmed a few pretty key people involved in that organization that already have other jobs and already are off going doing different things. And,
yeah,
when you read the tea leaves a little bit, it did seem like it was a little bit of a last dance for the Winnipeg Ice, just because, that arena that was so much a cornerstone to getting the team here, for whatever reason, pandemic, everything else that went into it, has never gotten off the ground and come to fruition.
Maybe they'll move to Arizona, Huss. Mullet probably needs another tenant, right?
Well, I could be in a little bit. It sounds like we got one more dance with Mullet Arena this year with the Coyotes. Oh, managed to go through a couple of weeks without talking about the Coyotes. Mike, you had to go there, right?
Rip that Band-Aid off the old wound, indeed.
Great having you. We'll look forward to that column on the ice and a little more clarity. I'm just going to get into that with Remo. What interesting clip from Donnie and Daly yesterday. And Rick Dhaliwal, very connected. And when you hear guys talking about that, like their phone was essentially blowing up a number of things. Usually where there's a smoke, there's a little bit of fire. Have a great one. Enjoy the Canadian Open. If they ever stop talking about the merger, we'll be following Aaron Cockrell. I know you'll have a bunch of stuff in the free press on that. Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
Take care, Huss. Enjoy the week.
All right, there's our guy, Mike McIntyre. Great stuff with Mike. Stay tuned. We've got some great stuff coming up in a minute, but I'm going to bring Remo in. We'll just talk a little bit more about that ice bit before we get out to Fienberg. But hey, Princess Auto, proud sponsor. Speaking of Aaron Cockrell, been behind Aaron for a while, along with TCB on his lid. And of course, huge sponsors of the Bombers, and the home opener is on Friday. Make your plans to get there early and get out to the Princess Auto tailgate zone. $5 beers, $3.50 pop and hot dogs until kickoff out at the Tailgate Plaza area. It opens at 5:30, kickoffs at 7:30. And, of course, big game against the Ticats to get things going. Princess Auto, proud sponsors of the Blue and Gold, proud sponsors of WST, and 2 locations in Winnipeg. And you can always shop online 24/7, 365 at Princess Auto. Our Consolidated Supply folks are busy. I know they're big Bomber fans, and shout out to Winnipeg Walter, who's actually going to get into his first game in his season tickets from Consolidated Supply that he won in the December Marbles Tournament of Champions. What a great game to start that off. Consolidated Supply, great supporters of ours and the leaders in irrigation systems for your property, artificial turf, new and used golf carts is the exclusive club car in Manitoba, and great options for your property, including hot tubs and amazing outdoor kitchens. Not to mention the leaders in small engine parts and repair. Pop by and see them at the showroom. They're open to the public at 1395 Niagara Road East, or find out more online at cte.ca. All right, Royal Sports. Hey, we were talking about Bomber home opener. I was popping into Royal on the weekend, and a couple things that you're going to want to cop. First of all, tons of great new Bomber gear. T-shirts, Q-zips, jerseys, shorts, and tons of amazing hats. All there just in time for the start of the season. And of course, they just got their new shipment of Sea Bears hats as well. So if you haven't been able to cop a Sea Bears hat, who, by the way, are playing right now, we'll give you an update on that in just a minute. You can get those all at Royal Sports, looking damn good for their inaugural season. All new era stuff, best in the biz. That is all there at Royal Sports right now. Not to mention, get outside, make the most of this weather. We've got soccer, baseball, softball, tennis equipment, disc golf as well, and a huge selection of bikes. Follow them on Instagram at Royal Sports Pembina for latest merchandise drops and sale information, especially their world-famous tent sales. And you can pop down and see them at 750 Pembina Highway. And of course, no game tonight. We do have Blue Jays in action after Alek Manoah got rocked yesterday, and apparently he's been optioned down to Florida on a try and find himself assignment. But if you're looking for a spot for the Jays, and of course the NBA Finals tomorrow and the Stanley Cup the following day, best place together with friends for the big game is always your local Boston Pizza. Ice cold schooners, world famous BP wings, and gourmet pizzas, and the latest from the BP feature menu. And heck, if you're staying in tonight, you can order online at bostonpizza.com. I think I've actually got free delivery on Skip right now for that as well. So you can check that out. Maybe it's different from area to area. Let's get Remo back in here. We are going to go to Geoff Fienberg at the RBC Canadian Open in a minute for what will be an awesome visit. As he's got boots on the ground there with the biggest story in all of sports. But Remo, just before we get to the Donnie and Daly, Sea Bears are in action this afternoon. I've been seeing people following the game throughout the afternoon in the chat.
Yeah, I guess 11 a.m. game. They're playing against Vancouver and Langley, BC, and 97-81 for the Sea Bears right now. 4:01 remaining. I'm not sure if the target score has been set. I have we've got the box score here. Shout out to the CEBL website. They got this There's Teddy Buckets, 22 points, 14 boards, 6 assists. That's a nice line for him. So Seabears. Okay.
So Teddy Buckets has been so hot ever since Gregory did the reverse mush on him, DMing us about how he couldn't hit a shot and maybe it was Teddy Bricks. He's now been Teddy Buckets ever since then. Had a monster game in their last win. And I tell you what, they can pull this win off. And it looks like they're now at the target score. So I guess they'll need to get to 103 for their second win. We're going to be talking about a team that's 3-1 and already with a couple wins on the road if they can finish this one out. And of course, coming back at home next week for their second home game on, I believe, the 12th.
Yeah, I don't know where they showed the target score. Some people are saying it's 106 in Chad, but either way.
If it's 91. Oh, yeah. Sorry. That's right. Add 9. So, yeah, that would make sense. So
But,
this 3:55, if they've stopped, that's the first break. And then presumably they do a timeout, and then they come back in the target score.
Like, that's a huge lead. Expansion team. And I see people in chat writing, this is following the trend of expansion teams winning.
Yes.
Expansion team means wins. It used to mean you have a shit team, and then they move to another city, like the Thrashers or the Grizzlies. But no. The Kraken and the Golden Knights reverse the trend. You're getting an expansion team. They better give you something good so you can sell it to the fan.
Hey, just before, and I know I brought this up with Mike, but I did want to touch on this. We got, with everything else going on, we didn't get to it at the start of the show. But Rick Dhaliwal, as I mentioned, and of course Donnie out there on Donnie and Dally, talking yesterday about the potential. Lots of rumors that the Winnipeg Ice are headed west. And what Mike had mentioned on this, that potentially the Aquilinis were involved and they were considering taking it to Chilliwack. I heard from a couple sources that there was a couple of other spots out in BC or Eastern Washington that might be a spot for a team. What I haven't heard, Remo, is anything positive on the future of the Winnipeg Ice here in Winnipeg, and that's really unfortunate. It seemed like they were fighting an uphill battle in that rink. Their new rink never came together. They had such an amazing team this year and finally got to play in the big rink in the WHL playoffs. Never ended up getting back for a game 6 or 7, and it could very well be that loss to Brad Lambert and the Seattle Thunderbirds in game 2 of the series in Winnipeg was the last we've seen of the Winnipeg Ice and the WHL here in Winnipeg for the time being.
Yeah, someone emailed it to me yesterday. Donnie and Dally on their YouTube channel had about a 4-minute chat. Rick Dhaliwal saying he's just hearing a lot about the Winnipeg Ice possibly going to Chilliwack, and Francisco Aquilini, the owner of the Canucks, interested in purchasing them. But it just seems like a lot of smoke on the ice. We had the report that they got a fine, which they denied and made Mike Sawatsky apologize for not building the arena, which was a condition of them moving the team here. And that's the number one question every single day. When are they getting the arena? When are they getting the arena? And they never built it. So you can't keep. The Ice are basically the Coyotes of the WHL right now, playing in the how many people are in the Ice Cave Wayne Fleming Arena?
It's 1,600, 1,700.
And then you see the Quebec Remparts filling 18,000 people, and obviously different circumstance, but it was the smallest arena. Can't keep doing that forever, and where there's smoke, there's fire. So obviously a lot of smoke, and we'll see what happens. But there's a lot of rumblings with the Winnipeg Ice, and when you have a team that goes through the process of trying to win a championship, and they've traded all these picks, I think this is kind of nearing the end of this run.
This was the year if they were going to do it.
So we'll have to, we'll stay tuned to the story, but people are interested, which is a shame because it seemed like they had trouble filling the building of, the smallest building in the WHL. I don't know why. Maybe people didn't want to go to the arena, or maybe people didn't even know the Winnipeg Ice were here in terms of marketing. But if they had, were able to build that arena, I do wonder if it would have worked. It also would be nice to have that, small arena for other concerts and stuff like that. I wonder
for sure.
if it could be successful.
Well, listen, the way that area of the city's grown, I mean, the one place I think that it was possible was to do it out by the rink training center, out McGillivray, because it's not technically part of the city of Winnipeg. And, there's a deal with True North on venues of a certain size within city limits. But I think they had a plan. Unfortunately, it just hasn't come to fruition. Hey, listen, just before we get down to Oakdale, Goldeyes are back in action tonight against the Chicago Dogs, beginning a 6-game homestand this week. Incredible weather. I can't imagine a better setting. We had it for the first 9 games. It just continues right now. Best weather we've ever seen for baseball this early in the season. You got all the great offerings of the Goldeyes, the great food, the great drink. Tonight they're taking on the Chicago Dogs. And tomorrow they're expecting 6,000 students for a game at 11 a.m. So be all hands on deck tomorrow at Shaw Park. You can find out more at goldeyes.com. And Carey Anderson throwing at the first pitch on Saturday at the game. And that'll be a fireworks game for Métis night on the weekend. But all the information, including ticket availability and information on that ballpark brew fest that we talked about yesterday, is all there at goldeyes.com. All right, we hit this huge story right off the top, and we had planned this already to talk to Geoff Fienberg. He's one of our favorites to have on the program. It's the RBC Canadian Open, and it happens to be held at his home course. Who could have possibly imagined that when we planned to talk to Fienberg today, that this morning would be the bombshell of all bombshells in the sports and business world, that PGA and LIV are getting together. But that's the backdrop for our visit with a very special guest right now, while Geoff Fienberg joins us from Oakdale, the site of the RBC Canadian Open on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Fienberg, it's great to have you on. The topic of this segment took a little bit of a hard right this morning with the news out of nowhere that the PGA Tour and LIV are merging just as we get ready for tee-off on Thursday. We'll get to the tournament in a minute, but first off, immediate reaction. I honestly had to check that it was April 1st. I have not been as stunned about a piece of sports news in as long as I can remember.
So I was shocked, like a lot of people. Did not really expect that coming. I can tell you Phil Mickelson spent the last week tweeting like he knew the Powerball numbers, though, Hustler. We're coming up on Tuesday morning, I tell you. And in and around the putting green here, listen, there's about 9 or 10 great players here, and it's a pretty weak field after that. So sort of a lot of the players that I've seen conversing are maybe that mid to lower tier PGA Tour player, but none of them knew. None of them knew. I don't know if a Rory McIlroy knew or a Jon Rahm, but this has taken a lot of players by complete surprise. There's a lot of bewilderment, confusion. There's a lot of hearing like, you got to imagine being one of those guys that turned down the super bag. Like, right? What did you do that for? And I was right beside guys like Brendan Todd and Patton Kazire, who were pretty much making comments like their boy Hudson Swafford got $10 million. They could have at least scored $7. So there's a lot of confusion here. I will say, as the dust is kind of settled on it, I'm happy. Like, we get golf back, we get all them back. Should I be upset that guys like Rory McIlroy, Jon Rahm, Morikawa turned down $100 million offers? I'm sure they're fuming, and I don't know how they get made good. But we get Patrick Reed back. We get that President's Cup with full steam in Royal Montreal next year. Like, there are a lot of positives. There are a lot of negatives, and I think players that spoke out and put their feet in the ground have to feel like idiots. They had their knees cut out from right under them. They have to be made to feel like really stupid, or they stood up for a cause and were lied to. So how does Rory McIlroy, Jon Rahm feel about that? But in general, it's not my problem that Rory McIlroy didn't take a bag, and I'm happy that the best players will play together more often as spoiled North American sports fans.
Yeah, the way it sounds like the Saudi PIF is going to be the chairman, but Jay Monahan has angled himself to be the CEO of this new venture. I can't imagine that he's a very popular guy amongst the rank and file of the PGA Tour right now. There's so many ramifications of this on every level of the sport. But the bottom line is, this is a guy that has been pleading with the likes of the Rorys and the Roms and all members of the PGA Tour to stick around. And out of the blue, they find out, as Mackenzie Hughes said on Twitter today, that they're merging with LIV Golf.
Yeah, it's truly incredible. And I'll be honest, Huss, my first reaction was to feel bad for the super bag guys that turned it down. Like, remember those crazy tag team rumors we heard about Cantley and Shoffley? Like, they'd go as a team for these preposterous numbers. But I think now that it's settled, I kind of feel bad more for that second or third tier player who could have maybe gotten 20 million, who isn't as good of a golfer as any of those other guys who don't have the means to make the money off the course like maybe a top 20 player does. Those are the guys that I feel like I might have a little more sympathy for, is a guy in that $20 million range who turned it down. There's a players only meeting at 4:00 here at Oakdale, Hustler. I will promise you I am not leaving. I might leave I live close enough. I could go home, take a little rest, put the feet up, but I got a media credential, so I could go get some, drink and eat inside anyway. But I will be here when players are exiting the property after that. I will be here. I've told my wife, this is like Dan Rather calling his wife saying, I got to go to Baghdad, and I might be here a while today.
Oh, you were already planning to be there, and it just started happening. And this spot, this meeting of the PGA Tour players quite well.
Yes, Hustler. Well, I assume it's in the dining room in the clubhouse. I mean, where else are they going to have a meeting with 150 guys? I'm a member here. That's where I had my bar mitzvah party. My wife forbid for us to get married here. So we will not do that. But we celebrated many great family events here in that dining room, Mother's Day brunches, holidays, all that fun stuff. Yeah, but I will tell you, there hasn't been a meeting that feisty in that room probably since the old Jewish ladies got together to argue about redecorating the coffee shop. So I'm looking forward to it. And as I joked with you, I know the people who run food and beverage here. Give me a black sport coat, a white shirt, some slacks. Fienberg's going to go pour some water.
This needs to happen. We're talking with Geoff Fienberg at Oakdale before what was supposed to be a practice round. And the RBC Canadian Open, I mean, it almost takes a back seat. I know guys will be getting ready for their rounds on Thursday, but frankly, the entire sport, and really the entire sports world, I think, is talking about this tour and frankly, what's going to be happening at 4 p.m. in that dining hall right now. I wonder what this does to the tournament overall once we actually get going for play on Thursday.
Yeah, so it's clearly overshadowed the tournament. I could argue maybe it gives the tournament some well-needed buzz away from all golf talk being about the U.S. Open. So I like that I have a Canada flag flowing in behind me there too. Perfect angle. But yeah, it definitely takes away from the tournament. Hustler, at 1 p.m., Matthew Fitzpatrick has media availability in the press room. I will be there, but he was a guy who was outspoken that they shouldn't be allowed back. They shouldn't be allowed on the Ryder Cup, President's Cup teams. He is not Rory McIlroy, not John Rahm, but he is one of the higher-end players in golf who did sort of plant his flag, and I'm sure he turned down a huge LIV offer. I have no doubt. So I feel bad for Matt because he's going to be the first person who actually has to speak to this. Jay Monahan gets to put out a statement. I don't know whether they've canceled the presser. I doubt it. I don't know whether there'll be an instruction to not talk about it, or not to ask about it. But we shall see.
How in the world does this happen so suddenly with seemingly nobody knowing this was happening? I mean, you look at the golf media around.
I'm talking to Hustler.
Yeah.
Aaron, you want to say hi to Paterson? Dude, right here, Aaron Cockrell. I'm doing a hit with
Get out of here, Aaron. What's
How you doing?
going on?
I just recognized the voice when I walked by and said I listened to their pod a lot, and I love it.
That's great, man. Listen, good luck this week. We're everyone back home pulling for you.
Thanks, Hustler.
Awesome. Aaron, have a great week, man. You think you're going to play or just practice? Or just cut here? Awesome. All right. Maybe I'll join him for that walk.
Fienberg coming through big time for the peg here with Aaron Cockle.
Dude,
oh my God, that was awesome.
I felt big time. There's a dude walking with TrackMan, looks like a player. He's like coming over, like acknowledging that he recognizes me. I'm like, I don't know how anyone would know me. And yeah, he comes right over, and it's awkward. And I know you guys are boys, so what a moment there, Huss.
That was that was amazing. I knew it was going to be great to have you at your home course. Didn't think we might be able to pull that off. Hey, listen, the entire discourse is going to be about this LIV PGA Tour conversation, but tell us a little bit about Oakdale and the last couple days on the grounds. The rough looks pretty gnarly. What sort of test is this going to be for the members of the current PGA Tour that tee it up on Thursday?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, and I've said a few times, going back to when this thing happened and when it was rumored to happen, I told the first 4 or 5 people who told me this could be happening, I called them liars and idiots. There's no way the pros would be coming here. I didn't think the property was big enough, nor did I think the infrastructure on the property for all the tents and what would sort of be required to put on what's required here, but we have pulled it off, Huss. I sort of feel like the movie She's All That, where we're a nice, nondescript, pretty girl, but then she got all dolled up and walked down the stairs, and I take a look at this property, and it like a great sense of pride. I've never seen it in better shape. It's a classical parkland golf course. You'll tee up from above, you'll hit down into valleys, you'll tee right back up. I got to be honest, though, some of the feedback I've gotten from caddies seem to think that it's playing harder than I ever could have imagined. Now, if I was out here today, I'd lose 100 golf balls, and the pins are quite criminal compared to member play. But I still think it's an easier property than St. George. I don't think who could argue who's played both, and they got to 19 under at St. George last year. Now, is that a byproduct of Rory got to 19 under? So that's a bit of a different quality of standard. I still think we clear 18 under here. I think we go lower than St. George, Huss. They'll score here quite easily, I believe.
Hey, speaking of Rory, has he been seen on the property over the last little 24 hours or so? I know he came to Canada on Sunday night.
Okay, so I have not seen Rory on the property, and I've got people all over. I get sweet nothing messages. If there's a Rory sighting, I would be notified. I saw his caddy, Harry Diamond, walking the course, checking out the sort of bombing gouge areas. Like, he was way deep on the first. Must have been going down there into the rough. Like, okay, if Rory wants to unleash here, could we still make this happen? So I've seen his caddy scouting the course. I've seen no sign of Rory, who's probably up to his ass in RBC corporate obligations, but I'm quite shocked we haven't seen him on the course yet. Will he be here at 4 p.m.? I hope so.
I do think about Rahm and McIlroy, but McIlroy in particular, he was sort of the face of the PGA Tour when it was as divided as it's ever been, and it's obviously taken a real toll on Rory. Do you think he's happy about this, considering everything they put in, but knowing what the future is going to be for guys like him to put this behind them?
I don't know. This thing kind of it did a lot of damage to a lot, right? Between reputations, potential friendships. Geoff, how's it going? Good. Saying hi to Geoff Ogilvy, former major champion. Nice. Spells his name Geoff, like myself. So we have that. We have that going for us. Rory, yeah, I'm sure he's pissed. I don't know if it's, but for Rory, I don't think it's pissed that he turned down 150 million. I think he's pissed because it makes him look really stupid. Right? This whole discourse now turned into a shit show. It was a shit show. He sort of put himself on that pedestal, and he did it. There was a lot of double talk, but he put himself on the ledge. And now it feels like the commissioner kicked off the best players. Like in the NHL, Huss, as fans, it seems like everyone hates Gary Bettman, can't stand him. But by all accounts, he does great for the owners. The thing about the PGA is the owners are the players. The owners are the players. Who owns the PGA? Rory McIlroy owns the PGA. Jordan Spieth owns the PGA. Jon Rahm owns the PGA. That's who might have been real pissed off today. So there has to be a trickle down. And next week's a major, so this is just the beginning of, I don't know. There's so many unknowns still, but it's so weird.
So what have you thought at all about what golf next year looks like? Like, is Is Spieth going to be drafted to the range goats? I mean, will the high flyers already be in negotiations to get Hideki Matsuyama on their squad? Like, what happens to LIV?
I honestly have no idea. There's so many questions. The one thing we did notice is that seems to be kicked out of this whole operation, though, for the moment, appears to be Greg Norman. There's no mention of him anywhere in any of this. His 15 minutes might have expired.
Geoff Fienberg's with us at Oakdale, getting ready for the RBC Canadian Open, which is pretty much an afterthought with the bombshell news this morning of the merge of the PGA Tour and LIV Golf. That being said, we do have our National Open this week, and we're getting a great look from Fienberg of the course, and that is the practice area. Just give us a bit of a scene setter, Fienberg, and you got a pick or two for us as to who you think might be sanded on that green with the trophy on Sunday afternoon?
Well, for me, my pick is Tommy Fleetwood, but that should come as no surprise to anybody.
How was your moment yesterday with him, by the way?
Oh, it was great. It was great. I mean, listen, he was working on the range. He caught an eye of me. He then whispered to his coach. Clearly, there's that weird guy who was messaging me on the internet. Then the coach turned around and looked and smirked, so I knew they were talking about me. But we had our moment, and he's smart enough to probably realize it was unavoidable. And he probably resigned to the fact that we're going to see each other every day.
And hey, you've been hotter than hell. Had Vic last week. Why not Tommy? He's probably thanking that you're going to be riding with him the way you've been picking lately.
Listen, Huss, what's the knock on Tommy? Do we have PGA Tour wins? No, we don't. Where's 99% of PGA Tour events in America? Tommy doesn't win in America. Tommy has won all over Europe. He's won in the Middle East. He's won in South Africa. Why not Canada? Why not, Tommy? Come on. And I don't know what his opinion of me is now. It's probably a little wishy-washy. But I think if he wins this tournament, he'll have to think fondly of me.
Oh, believe me, there'll be a dinner invite the next time he comes back to defend the tourney. Well, I think we've locked it in. Tommy to win the tournament, and our guy Aaron Cockrell popping on the show today live while you're doing your bit with us for Top Canadian at the events and playing into the weekend. It's going to be awesome. Listen, folks, if you want more reaction from PGA Tour and LIV, Geoff went on with Tim and Pat Mayo on the PME, the Pat Mayo Experience, earlier today. Check that podcast out. And Fienberg, I will be living vicariously through you and all of your tweets. Please keep up the dominant work on social media. And if you can get in that meeting this afternoon, we'll look forward to all of your boots on the ground reporting for golf fans around the world this afternoon for the big meeting where you had your bar mitzvah in the dining room at Oakdale CC.
All the best, Haas. You're the man anytime.
All right. All-time visit on WST from Geoff Fienberg. And how about the little cameo in from Aaron Cockrell, our guy, teeing it up this weekend at the RBC Canadian Open. That was, listen, I see the chat. I mean, we know why Fienberg is so popular. He's just a hilarious dude, a great friend of mine. Been talking golf and football with him for a long, long time. That was certainly the most memorable Fienberg visit, though, I think that we've ever had. Obviously, all our golf reports and throughout this crazy week brought to you by our friends at Breezy Bend. You got a youngster, you want to get them working on maybe some of that LIV and PIF money for later on in their life. Great junior program out of Breezy Bend. Incredible long-term home for you and your family with the championship course. Great practice facilities and the best 19th hole around. Talk to our pal Corey Johnson, the incredible GM there at Breezy, about getting on the waiting list for next year if you'd like to make Breezy Bend your long-term golfing home. You can find out more online at breezybend.ca. Our friends at Little Brown Jug are fired up for the weekend. Folks, if you missed the big news last week, Little Brown Jug is now an official partner with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, which means you'll be able to get the great taste of 1919, their flagship beer, at Bomber games this season and in the future. Now, I did some recon for you. It's not at all of the beer stations. Obviously, I believe it's Molson still has a huge imprint there in Winnipeg. But if you're looking for great local beer, the Poutineries, and I believe it's the Hometown hometown concession stands on both the upper and lower bowls have 1919. So pick it up on Friday. It's going to be a great day to have a 1919 and watch the Bombers kick off their season against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. And a big shout out to our friends at Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge. This heat reminds me of a couple of the times that I've been out at Aikens, and you fish all day, maybe sit up shop for a shore lunch, jump in the water for a while, and the incredible guides make a incredible meal for you with all the fish that you caught in the morning. There's really nothing like the Aikens experience, and as great as the fishing is, folks, the Terren and Aikens team's hospitality is that much better. Incredible option for corporate tours or events, as well as friends and family tours. They're over 90% booked for this year, but go to aikenslake.com or hit Pit Terren up at Aikens Lake on Twitter and let them know you're looking at availabilities for this year, or get planning at Aikens trip next year. Again, online at aikenslake.com. All right, we do have to get to Coolbet lines, and we're back at the track tonight. But Remo, I believe the trade to announce is now confirmed with the Blue Jackets and the Kings, and the Flyers are involved. Fill me in.
Yes, here is the trade. Shout out to Daily Faceoff, DFO Fantasy, for spelling it out for us here in this nice little chart. Sorry, podcast listeners, I'll just read it for you. So Columbus gets Ivan Provorov, and LA retains 30% of Provorov's salary, and Philadelphia gets Cal Peterson, that's from LA, he had the big contract, Sean Walker, defenseman, prospect Helgi Grans. Philadelphia also gets from LA their 2023 second-round pick, and Philadelphia gets the 2023 first-round pick, 22nd overall. That is LA's original pick, which was traded to Columbus in the Korpisalo Gavrikov deal. So for Columbus, basically, they trade a first-round pick for Provorov, and LA retains 30% of the salary. And LA dumps the Cal Peterson contract, Sean Walker contract. They trade away a second pick in Helgi Grans. And Philadelphia gets a first-round pick, a second-round pick, Cal Peterson, Sean Walker, and Helgi Grans. So, Columbus, they're trying to contend. They want to shore up their defense, so they're going with Ivan Provorov to do that. LA, they're trying to get rid of salary so they can sign Vladislav Gavrikov and, I don't know, maybe try to get another goalie, possibly Connor Hellebuck, or
We know a guy.
Yeah, I don't know if they're trying to get him. And Philadelphia's like, hey, we're tanking. Give us, or they're rebuilding. That's a team that is definitely rebuilding for sure, confirmed rebuild. And they get 2 picks, a prospect, and a couple of overpriced guys. I'm sure. What are they gonna do with Peterson? Like, send him to the minors? Is he gonna play? But
who knows? I mean, goalies are weird, man. I mean, he'll get to go to camp, and maybe he's in a new situation. I mean, it wasn't like, he was pretty damn good in LA up until signing that 3-year contract. Then he just completely lost it. So you can find it back. He'll get a chance. But, this was not about Cal Peterson. They had to take Cal Peterson to get the first-round pick, the second-round pick, and the other assets that they got.
That's a nice trade. So they just gave up Provorov and got that's a really big haul for Ivan Provorov. I don't know, kind of rivaling the Tanner Jeannot haul that he got in terms of number of pieces. At least I think Kevin Connaughton, former Moose, was actually also involved in this trade, but he's not relevant for fantasy, so they didn't include him on DFO fantasy.
Such disrespect of former Moose Connaughton.
And then the other rumor that this Anthony DeMarco and David Pagnotta from Fourth Period, they're saying Philadelphia is also in talks on moving Carter Hart. So
did they say with who?
They did not. No teams were mentioned, but trade season, the Stanley Cup Final, it's over. So just open the trade floodgates, rumor central. Let's have some fun here, hey?
Yeah, no doubt. Hey, listen, speaking of fun, we're going to get to our horse picks in a minute, but let's get over to our great partners at Coolbet for the lines today. And we got no game in the NBA Finals. We got no game in the NHL Finals. So we'll focus in on the Blue Jays. Big Blue Jays news today, though, and I think I mentioned this earlier. Alek Manoah heading down to Florida to try to find his game. He got absolutely murdered last night, gave up 6 runs and 7 hits in the first inning, only registered 1 out. And that game was pretty much over against the Astros before it even started. That being said, Kevin Gossman's on the bump tonight against Houston. Jays are a -133 favorite. Gossman's had 5 really solid starts in a row. I kind of like them to win. I think I might put the Jays on my daily pick for Coolbet. Follow them on Twitter at Coolbet Canada. They'll fire that out later on, and of course on Instagram. They do have a bunch of Blue Jays daily exclusives, all Goss, no breaks, 7+ strikeouts from Gossman, and the Jays to win is +150. We've got a double chance dinger, Guerrero or Alvarez to record a homer at +180. George Springer's revenge, 2+ total bases for Springer, and a Jays win. And the hit parade, Springer, Bo, Vlad, Belt, all to record a hit or more, +265. Check those out in the exclusives. And tomorrow, we're going to do a special lock shop. Pat Gregoire is going to join myself and Dustin Nielsen, and that's going to be right after Winnipeg Sports Talk. So I'll mention that tomorrow, but around 3:30 Winnipeg time, we'll get at it with some picks for both Game 1 of the Canadian Football League season, the Thursday nighter, and our picks for the RBC Canadian Open. Again, huge thanks to Coolbet for their support. And, of course, the Winnipeg Sports Talk at the NHL Draft begins on June 26th, sponsored and presented by our gang over at Coolbet. All right, Remo, I did not have any luck last night. I've spread my bets out well through 1 to 7 tonight, trying to make things happen. But why don't you give me your selections right off the bat to get things going? Parade to post tonight, or post time, is 7:30 p.m. And if you want some information on guys who actually know what they're talking about with the picks, get on with Kirk and Stretch, 6:45 on the AS Downs YouTube channel. Where are you going tonight?
Yeah, you and I both went over yesterday, so I still got a bit of a lead on you. I'm pulling up my picks here. I'm enjoying the chat. Shout out to SK, claims that he just had an encounter with Josh Morrissey, and he name dropped you to Josh, who was on our show at the end of the season. So
Nice. I saw that Josh was just in Spain.
yeah, that's what I said. He's checking out some soccer matches. Anyway,
We'll have to get him back on. Josh, a big fan favorite of the Jets, and of course, us here at Winnipeg Sports Talk.
okay, here are my picks. Race 1, exacta, first, second, any order. Maybella, which I've definitely bet on before, and Dazzling Gold. I got that one. I'm going with race 2, another exacta. 3, 4. Green, Amazon, and Canadian Authority, first, second, any order. I got race 5. I'm picking, this is a big one, Huss. Picking Melisandre to win in this 10-horse race. That is a
race is massive.
$4 bet. Race 5 and race 7 are enormous tonight. And race 6, I'm doing a triactor box. 1, 2, 3, any order, $1. For 6 total. I got Leah's on tune, By Y'all, and Big Al's Princess.
I always love By Y'all. I think By Y'all might be on mine.
I think we've hit those before. I definitely have bet on Leo's on tune last year. I've definitely bet on By Y'all. So that's what I got tonight. Hopefully it's better than my last night.
I'm going 4-2 exacta in race number 1, Maybella and HD's Hope. I'm going a 4-2 exacta in race number 2, Canadian Authority and Blazing Bow. In race number 3, what I got here? I'm going number 5 to win. That's Meta J. And then in race number 4, I've got another win bet. Number 3 is Bottle of Smoke. So I'm betting on the J. I'm betting on the smoke. Hopefully something can come through. What about
You're not going to do Bottle of Smoke with explosive?
Explosive? I could have done that. Oh, yeah. Race 5 is the big one. So I did go for a triactor box on this one. Mission Bell, Orange Theory, and Speedy Gigi. Kind of stayed away from a few of the favorites, but anything can happen in those. That could make my year. Just that one wager. So we'll see what happens with that one tonight. And then the last two races I actually kind of sprinkled throughout. Race number 6, I've got 4 to win. That's by y'all. And then race number 7, the final race, I've got win number 6 to win, and that is number 6. Oh, Crowned Royal.
Yes.
Crowned Royal was a good one last year. 10 to 1 right away. 12 horses in that final race tonight. I might actually add an extra one.
Might have to watch.
Well
That's a crazy race.
for sure. Uncle Mo's Cat's in there. And
name.
man, Toil and Trouble, number 11. Oh, and Hard West, actually, the favorite at number 12. So, great night, and some massive races. Should be good for the handle, as they say. Assiniboia Downs, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 7:30. Give them a call. Maybe try and get a reservation in the dining room one of these days for that incredible buffet. But the bottom line is we've got a lot of great options tonight with this beautiful weather. Head out to the track, bet on the ponies, get on down to the ballpark, check out the Gold Eyes. And I guess just before we finish off, Remo, I know everyone was following this throughout the show online and in the chat. Much like the first game for the Sea Bears against the Vancouver Bandits, they had a massive lead once they got into target score time and made it a lot closer than anyone would have liked. But they got the win. And our basketball team is now 3-1 on the season.
Yeah, we're following here. The game is on TSN Plus. CEBL's got a really nice website that has it all. So they won 106-103. It's a huge lead heading into this target score. And I don't know, when the Sea Bears are in target score, like none of their shots go in. It's like one of those video games that, makes every game close intentionally. They just couldn't stop missing their shots. So pretty awesome. They pulled it off. I thought it was going to be an epic collapse, but no, they pull it off. 106-103. So nice little afternoon Sea Bears action.
Love it. Well, we might get a little rain tonight. I saw Travis in chat saying that. I mean, if anything, it'll kind of come and go. It was weird. I saw a bizarre stat that a couple days ago, one of the measuring stations in Winnipeg had close to an all-time record with like 52 millimeters of rain in the one day. And in other parts of the city, we barely saw anything. So who knows? Who knows about that? I can tell you what I'm going to be doing tonight, though. I'm going to be checking out more aftermath of this LIV Saudi tour and the PGA merger. I still cannot wrap my head around it. And Remo, what a perfect day. We had already booked Mark Zecchino to come on tomorrow and talk to us about the RBC Canadian Open. I have a feeling we might be hitting the merger with Z as well.
Yeah, I was looking forward to talking about RBC, but how do we not talk about this PGA LIV Golf? I'm sure more stuff will come out of it this afternoon as that press conference, I think, is taking place now, or is that the player meeting? So
yeah, the meeting is going right now.
So this is a pretty fascinating sports story, news story, business story. Kind of shocking that they would, after a year of trying to take the high road, they just end up taking the money.
Not even the high road. I mean, trying to be, purporting that, this is a principled thing. Where's the money coming from? That was a huge talking point. And I guess once the bag is big enough, then it doesn't matter where the money's come from anymore. I don't know what this means there's so many questions about this. How does LIV work? The PGA Tour work? What does this mean for guys like Aaron Cockrell on the DP World Tour going forward? And by the way, just quickly while we mentioned Cockrell, if you do want to give him a little touch at 14-1 for top Canadian over in Coolbet, they do have that as well. Sorry,
the one thing too, and I'm following Dave Zirin on Edge of Sports on Twitter. He's got a quote from a player who says, "It's insanity. The LIV Tour was dead in the water. It wasn't working. Now you're throwing them a life jacket. Is the moral of the story just to always take the money?" And I mean, we talk about the PG. I mean, these guys got paid so much money, and no one was watching LIV. The YouTube numbers were pretty bad. Their TV deal, no one knew where it was on. They could have just left it alone, and maybe it would have died. And now it must have been some ridiculous sum of money for them to accept it. And people were asking us as if we would take Saudi money if they ever came for WST.
Well, you know what? We could say no. We could say it would be principled. Like everyone else in the world, if the bag was big enough, we might have the. But I don't want to make I don't want to make light of it. I mean, even Phil himself. I mean, in those quotes to Alan Shipnuck before he went over.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his quote was, "Those are scary mother bleepers." Their treatment, their human rights record is abhorrent, and they killed Jamal Khashoggi. And there's a lot of people that still have a problem with that. Never mind how involved they were with, 27 of the 33 9/11 attackers. But listen, it's quite clear that money can change everything. But this is just the start of the story. So anyways, we'll have the Z-Man on tomorrow. I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, as Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, once said, everybody's got a price. And
great reference. Great.
Well, we
reference.
had Gene Okerlund in chat, giving a shout out earlier. So
yeah, Gino, I think me and Gene said he's going to be at the Bomber game on the weekend. Looking forward. Maybe we'll get a chance to meet him.
One thing about the Bomber game, we do need to end with this. This is perfect.
Yes.
Everyone was texting you this earlier today.
Speaking of everyone has a price, there is a price for what has to be the biggest hot dog in, I'm going to venture, pro sports. Like, we've heard the foot-long hot dog. We've heard of a 2-foot-long hot dog. How does a 32-inch monster dog sound? Well, that is exactly what our guy Jamarcus Hardrick is wearing, along with the Bombers' big hat. By the way, if you want to get on the screen, the one thing I noticed from the preseason game, if you want to get on the Jumbotron, get one of these big hats. They were very, very popular and easy to pick out. Yes, there is a monster dog. Now, Gregory sent me some details on this. It is a 32-inch hot dog topped with pierogi bites, sour cream, green onions, and something else, I'm not sure. Available for purchase in section 125 for $45.
That's a good deal, man.
I guess. I will say this. You know what is a great deal? The regular hot dogs, $3.50. I had 2 of them at the last game. I really probably should have done a hot dog review, but it was so hot. I was so sticky. I didn't want to pull the camera out. But whether you want a $3.50 dog before the game, hit the Princess Auto tailgate zone, or whether you want to, I'd love to see somebody try and take this down themselves. Or maybe a competition, the Gold Eyes Grand Slamwich against the Yard Dog.
It would be nice, to order that just for a group of people and just cut it into, sections. I think, I wonder if the value that's there. I can't really see the toppings. It looks like there's some banana peppers. I can't see what else. I don't think I would eat all of it.
Probably bacon because it's pierogi bites, sour cream, green onions. Again, what I'm looking at is cut off. But we'll be having. Oh, and by the way, Darcy Oak performing at halftime at the game on Friday as well.
Yeah, that's kind of cool. I'm curious how that's going to go.
Home opener is going to be awesome, folks. Get your tickets, bluebombers.com, or by calling 204-784-7448. All right, great show today. We got to get this pod up, but thank you for being with us. Thanks to Justin Dunk, talking a little CFL. Great visit with Mike McIntyre, talking all the Manitobans on Vegas, getting his thoughts on the LIV PGA Tour, future of the Winnipeg Ice, and more if you missed that. And then, arguably, the bar has been raised for the best hit of the year. Fienberg from the RBC Canadian Open with an impromptu visit from our guy Aaron Cockrell, who's teeing it up in the event on Thursday. Folks, thanks so much for being with us. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't already. Please tell a friend about Winnipeg Sports Talk and make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Hit that red button and find us wherever you get your favorite podcast. Search Winnipeg Sports Talk and lock that in. Thank you again for hitting 2 million YouTube views yesterday. Hard to believe everything that's happened in the last couple of years, but loving every minute of it. Thanks so much to the sponsors as well. We will see you tomorrow, 1:00 p.m. live. Mark Zecchino and much more on tomorrow's show. Catch you then. Stay cool and have a great night.
Oh my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.